take on the darkness, stare down deceit. Murder in the headlines, justice in the beat. From cold case whispers to killers in disguise, we rip off the mask, expose all the lies. Facts like bullets reload and deliver. Truth cuts deep like a blade in a river. Corruption shakes when the mic goes live. We dig where others won't survive. James rolling through the smoke. Truth hits hard, no time for a joke. Deceit, murder, we name every name. No restraint, no shame, just flame. Locked on the case, we investigate. Cold files heat up when we penetrate. The only source you'll ever need. 12 gauge investigate. We make them bleed. No games, no censors, just truth. Justice is loud, and we're the sound. This is 12 gauge Gaster Paper.
This is 12 Gauge Investigative. Let's jump in.
All right. How's everybody doing on this Memorial Day? I hope you guys enjoyed this Memorial Day weekend and that you spent it with your family and your friends and you were able to do some kind of relaxation. You know, it's needed, and sometimes we need to take advantage of that. My name is 12 Gauge, and this is my channel, 12 Gauge Investigative. I thought I'd hop on here and read a little bit, continue on this book, because I really do need to complete it. Like I said earlier, I've only completed one of the books that I've started, so I thought I'd get on here and I'd read some of this book and let you guys know. Even though we've had some documents and stuff now, it's a little more personable than just listening to documents and reading the documents about these individuals and their families. So let me see what process I want to do this in. Let's do this one. And y'all come into the chat and let's get some chat conversation going. I am going to start this a little bit with where I left off last night. If you hear piano playing, that's my nephew practicing. Let me put you guys in the chat over here. Hey, Texas, how you doing, buddy? You getting some storms over there? I know I caught a lot of storms on the other side of Cross Plains. I got a lot of rain, and it was coming down pretty good. So like I said, I'm going to read this and we'll get this going. Chapter 30. It says Jim and Stacy Chapin dropped their triplets off in Moscow on August 13th, 2021. The kids' backpacks were full of essentials to rolling suitcases topped with IKEA bags. The sun was shining on every face in the family as they crossed the pavement together toward campus. Empty nesters, Stacy Chapin posted on Instagram. She and her husband wore sunglasses in the picture, beneath which she commented, "Only for a few moments did I need them." She was referring to the tears she'd hidden behind her lenses. The family had done everything together for almost 2 decades, and now the kids were embarking on their next adventure without Stacy and Jim, but at least the siblings had one another. Maisie joined Kappa Alpha Theta, a sorority house with a touch of Southern charm to its circular second story patio and ornately carpeted, meandering staircase inside. Ethan and Hunter joined Sigma Chi fraternity with its more drab accommodation for the brotherhood the boys could appreciate. I'm going to take these bad boys off because it's hard to read and it's driving me crazy. Inside the sprawling ranch style Sigma Chi fraternity house, the living quarters were in sore need of updating. The bathrooms were so inadequately cleaned they looked like a biohazard. The bedrooms, though cleaner, were designed oddly with mattresses squeezed closely together atop a series of wood frame lofts with barely any ceiling clearance. But there was a secluded courtyard where parties could spill outside with much notice from the neighboring streets, from police or from university officials. And there was an outdoor basketball hoop and concrete pads lined with spectator seating in the form of a dozen battered couches that became soggy in the rain, then dehydrated and filled with pollen by July. Ethan often took advantage of the makeshift court, shooting a basketball through the shifting net that could be seen from Banfield, between him and the King Road residence that he would begin to frequent after meeting Xana. That first fall semester of college, Stacy and Jim visited the kids for parent and family weekend. The family went to dinner together, tailgated, and watched the University of Idaho Vandals football team stomp Southern Utah for a 42 to 24 victory. Later, they played cornhole, tossing beanbags in the dark in front of the Sigma Chi fraternity house. Stacy posted about the day on her Instagram account. It was perfect. University of Idaho for the win. Ethan, like most kids just getting to college after the pandemic lockdown, was experiencing the joy of finally socializing with his peers again, but also the mild discomfort that accompanied renewed confinement to the classrooms. According to an English department advisor, he was struggling slightly with the curriculum, but he was passing his courses and excelling socially. And he'd become friends with Xana Kernodle, then started dating her. Stacy and Jim continued to bring their triplet together for family vacations, so life for the Chapin kids hadn't changed much. It had just gotten better. Doesn't this sound a little interesting? They had their freedom and they had the comfort they'd grown up with at the same time. They spent their 2021 Christmas holiday at the Priest Lake vacation home. Maisie worked as a waitress at Hills during Christmas break, and she was excited to be her parents' server when they ate there, bringing drinks in copper mugs to their lacquered table, the snow outside through the dining room windows, weighing down the branches of the tamarack trees. I hope I'm saying that correctly. For spring break, the family went to Mexico and swam in an infinity pool overlooking the ocean just north of Puerto Vallarta. The water was blue and the wind was in the palm trees lining their street. The summer after Ethan's freshman year, Xana got a taste of the seemingly luxurious lifestyle and cozy vibes that accompanied hanging out with the Chapin family. That was the summer Ethan brought her to Priest Lake. They spent time on the boat together, went golfing, took hikes. Xana had started following Ethan's mother's Instagram account and had begun to like her photos. In one, a small herd of deer trotted across the golf course, nestled between groves of evergreen trees. In another, a turtle was released into a pond. Everything seemed perfect, even the family's vacation home. It was over 3,000 square feet of timber frame construction and had vaulted ceilings, four bedrooms, and a four-car garage on just under 2 acres that looked out at the 12th green of the Priest Lake golf course. Ethan's girlfriend had come a long way from the circumstances of her first few years, and Ethan had been happy to bring her into the fold. That fall semester, the two of them started spending time at the King Road residence. Dylan Mortensen, Xana's second floor roommate there, called Ethan and Xana the two best friends but perfect pair together. They both would look at each other with so much love, she wrote in a note that was read at their memorial. Everyone knew they were the perfect duo, and they both had this fun, passionate, crazy, but good energy. Dylan had only met Ethan that fall semester and wished she had gotten to know him more. He was so sweet and loving to Xana, she said. Xana was like his whole world, and you could see it in him. And Dylan felt Ethan's love as well, but differently. I got to experience what an older brother would be like, she said. He was easygoing and easy to talk to. Bethany Funk, the first floor roommate, said similar things, that in Ethan's presence, the whole vibe of the room would go up and everyone was just instantly happier. Ethan and Xana's relationship, Bethany said, made people believe in true love. On November 6, 2022, Stacy and Jim went back to the University of Idaho campus for their second parent and family weekend. All five of the family members stood together outside the Sigma Chi house for a photograph. There were leaves on the ground, and Stacy, a red mug in her hand, proudly wore a University of Idaho jacket. The rest of her family held red solo cups, the sun in their eyes and a flush on their faces from the autumn weather. Ethan stood between his mother and sister, towering over them, his long arms draping around her shoulders. The dimples in his cheeks were as wide as nickels when he smiled. Jim and Stacy could tell their triplets were doing well at school. We will no longer have to worry about these kids, Stacy said as she headed home, 1 week before Ethan's murder. Hello to everybody who's listening and who's in the chat. Happy Memorial Day to you guys. Chapter 31. Hunter Johnson met Ethan during rush week, when freshmen interested in the Greek system made the rounds of fraternity or sorority houses, which lured them with friendships and parties, hoping to curry membership. Hunter was already a member of Phi Delta Theta when Ethan came through. The Phi Delta chapter at Eastern Washington University, an hour away, would be sanctioned in the coming year for hazing rituals, setting their pledges, drunk, blindfolding them, and shoving them into a forest for the night. The University of Idaho Phi Delta had no such hazing complaints and were in good standings with the university when Ethan toured its facilities. Ethan was the first boy Hunter spoke with during rush week. To Hunter, Ethan seemed goofy but in a fun way. Someone to the equally tall and athletic Hunter could look forward to playing basketball with. Although Ethan eventually chose another fraternity, Sigma Chi, the two boys enjoyed a lasting bond. They partied together, double dated, played sports in their free time, and visited Hunter's family cabin together. Hunter often snuck the underage Ethan booze into parties for him. During the summer of 2022, Hunter and his girlfriend Emily frequently went golfing with Ethan and Xana. Ethan's charismatic personality and infectious smile would light up the course those days. At the memorial at Post Falls, Hunter would stand at the podium and tell the crowd, "You know it's going to be a good time when we had more drinks in our bags than we did golf balls." Eventually, Hunter would break into tears. Hunter was on hand for two of the police Noise complaint visits at 1122 King Road in the months before the murders. A second video of the August 16th body cam footage, shot from the vantage point of an officer who remained primarily along the perimeter of the residence while the incident unfolded, flushes out of the events and Hunter's part in them from a different angle. During the late afternoon get together, Hunter accompanied Kaylee Gonsalves through 1122 King Road, second floor, sliding glass door to meet police officers responding to a noise complaint made against the house on the back deck. It was hot outside, and Hunter's blue Nike branded polo style golf shirt was unzipped to his sternum. His shoes were also Nikes, retro white with the black swoosh to come back into style with college kids a few years ago. Hunter walked cautiously, then sat on a curb alert couch while an officer questioned Kaylee about the noise levels coming from inside. The sun made a direct hit, and Hunter rubbed his forehead with the back of his hand, momentarily pushing aside his floppy, middle parted hair. He wore a white zip tie on his right wrist with another zip tie hanging from the first, seemingly remnants from a recent party in the Greek system. Zip tie parties are a form of group drinking game in which two people are cuffed together until they've consumed a predetermined quota of alcohol. With his left hand, Hunter blocked the sun from his face, squinting through the fingertips at the officers and at the end of the portable beer pong table and red solo cups in a stack behind him. Then he unexpectedly stood up again while one of the officers was still talking to Kaylee. Sunlight hit the zipper on Hunter's shirt as he turned back toward the house. The officer's black shadow landed against the couch where Hunter had been sitting. Kaylee received a verbal warning, but Hunter was already inside by then. 2 weeks later, on September 1st, 2022, as previously mentioned, Hunter, accompanied by a friend, again greeted Moscow police officers at the front door to 1122 King Road. After this particular night's initial noise complaint had been made, Hunter wore a light gray polo shirt, dark hued shorts, and his Nikes. He could see from the doorway that there were a lot of cops outside. Some stood in the driveway, some closer to the door. One of them had asked to speak to a legal tenant, but Hunter explained, "So I just look for everyone that lives here, and they're not here right now." "No one's here that lives here at all?" the officer asked. Hunter shook his head. "No one's here that lives here," he said. After some back and forth about whether or not the partygoers were trespassing, the officers asked, "Who does live here? What are their names?" Hunter's friend spoke up. "I'm actually not sure," the boy said. Hunter shook his head again, as if to say, "I don't know either." I feel like I've read this before, but I don't know if I have or not. In the second body cam video, an officer approached the resident. Two young women in denim shorts quickly exited the driveway on foot, sliding toward the darker edges to avoid coming face to face with the police. He trained his flashlight on them, cornering them with the halo. "You guys haven't been drinking or anything, right?" "No," the girl said. "Okay, drive careful, okay?" "Thanks," one of the girls said. The officer continued to approach the house. He was accompanied by his ride-along, a civilian who shadowed the police officer for training or educational purposes. "It's hilarious," the officer chuckled. "As soon as they know it's the cops, they just blend into the darkness." He chuckled again when another of the responding officers yelled to the upstairs window, "We're only here for a noise complaint. Come to the damn door." The second floor windows were rectangles of light. "We'll figure out who lives here eventually," the body cam officer said to his ride along. Several more minutes passed. Nobody had yet answered the door. The officer radioed his dispatcher. "Moscow 157. Do we have any recent involvements at 1122 Queen?" he asked, mistaking the address the way it would have been again be mistaken on the phone with Maddie. Hunter and his friend could be heard finally opening the front door and engaging with the other responding officers. The audio captured one of the cops popping the Truly vodka seltzer cans and spilling them into the weeds, and caught Hunter avoiding straight answers to their questions. No, there was nobody present who lived in the house. No, he did not know their names. The sound of Hunter's voice crossed the darkness. And this has to tell you a lot as the mindset of these minors when they're responding to the police. You know, they're not going to be forthcoming, and most of the time they're going to embellish the truth. They're not going to directly implicate themselves if they don't have to. They're lying by omission. So catch me if you can type stuff. The second body camera caught nuances that the first one hadn't. How poorly lit the grounds were at night, how easily a human form could slink toward the periphery unseen. This footage came from the chest camera worn by Corporal Brett Payne, who only 2 months later would take the lead on the King Road homicide investigations. He'd walk through the scene, taking note of the bodies and so much blood everywhere. Hunter Johnson, who'd played a drunken game of verbal cat and mouse with Payne's team just months ago, had reportedly made the 911 call. Chapter 32. 2 a.m. is a dark hour. That's what Stacy Chapin told a Seattle reporter soon after her son's murder. She was referring to the sleepless, horrible nights the family was enduring together, struggling to understand what had happened and how to move through it. There's your answer. On November 30th, 2022, Stacy walked to the podium at the University of Idaho Vigil. She seemed comfortable on stage, and her voice, perhaps from her years of teaching, projected well in the hushed auditorium. I'm Stacy Chapin, she said. I'm Ethan's mom. Then she broke down crying. Eventually, she said, the University of Idaho is a special place for our family personally. Our triplets enrolled here together because the small town feel, the beautiful campus, and the Greek system. Those were all mandatory must haves when picking a school. She sniffled above the microphone. The people were the people here were kind and welcoming when we showed up for orientation, and we knew as a family that we'd made the right choice. A photo of Ethan as a teenager appeared on the screen of the network streaming the event. He wore a blue flannel shirt, and his hair across his forehead looked windswept. The circumstances that bring us here tonight, they're terrible. The hardest part, we cannot change the outcome. Stacy Chapin looked out over the crowd of faces. Our family is probably no different than your families, she said. We sat at the dinner table when time permitted. We played games together. We traveled. We hauled our kids to every new sporting event imaginable. We had cribbage tournaments, pickleball competitions, and basketball shooting contests. We surfed and spent countless hours on our boat listening to country music, which was Ethan's most favorite thing in the whole world. In fact, the Chapin family did seem a little different. They seemed like they had it all, and many don't. They had done their best to make the most of it. But the most important thing is that in our family, we always had each other's backs, and we will continue to do so. A young woman in the audience was crying. A young man stood behind her, holding on. We are eternally grateful that we spent so much time with him, Stacy said through tears. She addressed the audience more directly now. That's the most important message that we have for you and your families is to make sure that you spend as much time as possible with those people because time is precious and it's something you can't get back. She thanked the Moscow Police Department, the FBI, and the Idaho State Police for their continued effort in helping to find the King Road murderer. She also thanked the worldwide followers of this case, many of whom had been reaching out with condolences over social media. Please continue to support all four of our families, she added, and please be kind. Her husband, Jim, didn't speak. Through the many interview requests and the glare of news cameras and photographers chasing their family, Jim had said very few words other than to agree with his wife or to console her with understanding looks when she cried. The pain on Jim's face and the flush along his cleanly shaven head said all that rightly mattered to him. His boy was gone, and he wasn't coming back. When Jim finally did speak at any length, it was in the spring to Good Morning America, filming him and Stacy at a Washington State tulip farm. Yellow and white tulips lined the soil in long rows across the large, healthy acreage. The wind seemed to come from a long ways off. It's tough, Jim said, softly in a voice that seemed to have gathered from tears at the back of his throat. He wore a yellow University of Idaho ball cap and a gray hoodie beneath his black University of Idaho puffy jacket. He still had his other two kids going to school, and that was something to be proud of. They still needed his support, even if a piece of his heart had disappeared with Ethan. Tough not having him here, Stacy and I get up, watch the sunrise, and drink our coffee. He shook his head, searching for words. His ears were red from the wind, and his eyes were red from the rims from sadness. Crying our coffee, he added. That's how they spent their mornings, even months later, even when spring had blossoming from the ground, when rain clouds instead of snow clouds gathered overhead. Spring was a long ways from now, though. Coping would take all winter, and the rest of the winters ahead of them, too. Part 7, Chapter 33. It didn't take long for the trickle of the media the first days after the murders to become a roaring flash flood. It was no longer 20 or 30 reporters seen walking around campus, or traipsing over the downtown Moscow sidewalks, or camped in front of the police station in their puffy jackets. It was 100 and more vying for access at any given time. Access to cops, or to the King Road neighbors, or to the students who returned to the campus after Thanksgiving break. Especially coveted was across to the victim family members, not across, it's access. Especially coveted was access to the victims' family members who by now were turning off their phones and pulling their drapes closed against the cameras that had found their homes. Media representatives held notepads and long lenses and audio recorders and searched for headlines, mostly in rugged North Idaho and sometimes downstate in Boise, tracking survivor Dylan Mortensen, but also in Washington, where Ethan's family lived, or in Arizona, chasing after Jeff Kernodle, Xana's father. Access was gold. Reporters couldn't write the King Road story without it. In the process of attaining that access was simply a numbers game to those covering the Moscow case. The aim was to tactfully bother everybody and hope that a few would talk. Those who had flown to Moscow on the network's corporate dime had the most time to spend looking for leads. They stayed in hotel rooms for weeks on end, ate the same continental breakfast each day, and soon drove the same slippery roads each morning in the dark. Once the weather had changed, and it changed quickly on them. By early December, 15 inches of snow covered the ground outside the murder house, and the streets in the neighborhood were a sheet of ice. News Nation senior national correspondent Brian Enton was often seen in the King Road parking lot, sometimes standing atop a lighting case to add height for better framing in the camera lens when the ground was made uneven by snowfall, his crew's equipment shielded by an industrialized sized black umbrella. The temperature dipped to 1 degree, and the LED lights aimed at Enton provided the only exterior heat in the neighborhood. Between shots, Enton loitered with his hands in his pockets for warmth, his face expressionless under a base layer of makeup as he waited to go live. Sometimes he texted with Kaylee Gonsalves' family, who believed in the value of keeping Kaylee's story in the press, at least until her killer was caught. With Enton's insider access to the Gonsalves family as a good starting point, he began to report on the homicide daily, and News Nation saw a tsunami like surge in viewership. Moscow was also overrun with less pedigreed YouTubers trying to make their names in the true crime reporting genre. The monetization of their channels paid for their travel, and in that sense, they operated their businesses no differently than the big networks. Clicks on their videos meant cash for their coffers, and cash allowed their operation to be run and the story to be told. But while a major network usually covered the case with agreed upon decorum, freelancers profited more from showing personality. Bullhorn Betty, an unaffiliated citizen reporting on the homicides, opened each of her YouTube segments as if they were flashy TV commercials for used cars. Betty's color palette for the case was hot pink, icy blue, and cupcake frosting white. Her Venmo, Cash App, and PayPal identifiers scrolled beneath the screen, soliciting donations, and a pop punk soundtrack seemed as loudly as her tag instructing followers to hit the like button. There was a contrast between design and content in Bullhorn Betty's channel. Though the subject was as grim as they come, Betty's preservation was 1980s glam, and her audience ate it up. On the day that Chief Fry had ordered the victim's vehicles towed from the murder house, Betty walked gingerly along the iced over street out front. She wore a pink winter coat, gold hoop earrings the size of a mason jar lid, bejeweled sunglasses, and a knitted pink cap pulled down tightly. She held a cell phone, filming the scene. A late model tow truck had begun to hitch and remove Ethan and his brother Hunter's shared four-door cherry red Jeep Wrangler. It looked newish and expensive. Betty's grainy footage showed her primary camerawoman holding a DSLR camera with an oversized lens and a microphone attachment. The young woman filmed the tow truck as it veered out of the driveway. Off camera, Betty shouted excitedly, "Oh, hey!" She ran after somebody, then came to explain to her viewers that she had just been talking with News Nation's Enton. "We met Brian Enton when he wasn't a whole lot of anything," she told her fans, breath puffing from her mouth in the bitter cold. "He only had about 20,000 followers when we first met him, and we've ran into him throughout the country following these cases." By these cases, Betty meant the trail of murder across America, the bread and butter of her channel, and the hundreds of other YouTubers doing the same thing she was. When a big homicide case hit the news or social media, they jumped into their cars or booked airline tickets and chased down the story. Kaylee Gonsalves' Range Rover was sheeted with ice in the driveway. Police officers monitored the tow truck activity, and the traditional press corps had lined up directly across from the driveway, their lenses all pointing in the same direction. "Emotions," Betty started to say, describing to her followers how it felt to be at the scene. It get to you being here, feeling that vibe, the terror. She seemed genuinely overwhelmed. She was breathing heavily. Imagine that. The tow truck driver appeared to be wrestling with his chains. Something wasn't working right, and another man had across the snow to help. But then Betty added, "Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Please consider making a donation to PayPal, Cash App, or Venmo." The cloud covered skycast toned a muted gray across everything in sight. The press corps kept snapping their photos. Later in the day, they'd hurry to the impound yard for more. "I can't express how painful this cold is on my hand," Betty said. Her exposed fingers had gone pink in the frigid air. By the end of her 2-hour video, only police cars remained in the parking lot, and a few of the press corps' vehicles idled in a row along the street, burning fuel while their gear was packed into the rear hatches. Over the next few months, Bullhorn Betty continued to cover the case, printing money, as she said about her channel. But, but Betty also spoke on camera to her viewers about the psychological cost of pursuing the grisly real life crimes. Pain and darkness, she said, accompanied her continued exposure to the case. Like the opposite of rose colored glasses, hers made everything in the world look bleak. I don't think I like this woman. When they weren't on camera, the traditional press corps in Moscow often looked blank faced and beleaguered too. Access wasn't free, perhaps it just was the way in. Chapter 34. What do y'all think, Chad, about the Bullhorn Betty lady? Um, what do y'all think about her? I don't know. I don't know much about her. All I know is how people perceive her on these YouTube streets. I don't know much else about her. I don't think a lot of people like her. Chapter 34. Across social media, dozens of other unaffiliated citizens were reporting on the case as well. The fastest, most compulsive coverage began on Reddit and 4chan, then trickled across Facebook, where one dedicated group, the University of Idaho Murders Case Discussion, had grown to 250,000 users posting daily. More often than not, the Facebook posts played off mainstream media's reporting. Whatever had made it to the network news was dissemin- disseminated online by group members eager to discuss what they learned from nationally respected anchors. Sometimes it was just the other way around. National news anchors played off what they've learned from social media. Reddit user posts eerily accurate Idaho crime details with the headline on the leading national network in the early days after the murders. The segment included 3 law enforcement experts weighing in. For months afterward, that Reddit user's comments about the murder weapon and positioning of the bodies was discussed by multiple anchors and their law enforcement consultants. News Nation's Ashley Banfield reminded viewers that there had been a serial killer in Canada that the online community found before the police found him, and the police ignored them. So there is some lesson to be learned from that, and there are some things the community can actually help with in terms of investigation. The investigative work of citizen sleuths, in other words, could be compelling. They scanned the victim's old social media for clues, but also did more traditional research, like private investigators. They made phone or in-person inquiries of associates of the victims, mined public databases for documents, and created false social media accounts to conduct social surveillance on people they suspected of involvement in the murders. Some citizen sleuths went so far as to perform in-person surveillance of associates' residences and doxed their addresses, posting them online for those who wanted to look even further into someone they concluded might be a potential suspect. It was a risky business. For every helpful tip armchair investigators uncovered, there were multiple instances of misplaced suspicious and harmed innocent citizens. 4chan users theorized that the murders were revenge for a fraternity squabble, with Ethan as the killer's initial target. This led to dozens of posts on Reddit and finally on Facebook, where the theory was discussed thousands of times. It seemed plausible. Fraternity infighting, cross lovers at the center of the chaos, dark secrets. You know what's interesting? Is that's still going around right now. My sound is not low. Turn up your volume a little bit. I can't make it any louder. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm speaking right into the mic. So that's still going on today, which is really weird, that stuff like this keeps recirculating. Let's see where I am. It seems almost impossible to think that the perpetrator was focused on one of the girls and was willing or able to take on Ethan, said a Redditor. The perpetrator was actually focused on Ethan, and killing the girls may have been to throw Ellie off. This theory didn't stop at idle speculation. Citizen sleuths named the parties involved and drew links between them, and the animosity they imagined went all the way back to high school. In short order, the students and fraternity members allegedly associated with the squabble began to receive death threats from strangers. Several of them reportedly went into hiding. So we know which people that was, right? We know who that was. One of Ethan's fraternity brothers spoke out about the wild conjunctures on Twitter. It is one thing to be wrong, but it's an entirely different thing to be peddling a false narrative with poorly vetted sources to generate engagement for your profile. Leave us alone, please, he said. Jack DeCoeur received death threats too, simply because he'd been Kaylee's lover. He'd been scorned by her and vengeful, the sleuth decided. And a U of I professor started getting death threats after a TikToker claimed she had put a hit on the residents of 1122 King Road. A neighbor on King Road also began getting threats after a social media mob deemed him creepy. In interviews he gave to the media about living so close to such a horrible tragedy. You see how all this stuff had just snowballed from the very beginning and is still going on. It's like every time something gets settled a little bit, it just gets reinvented, retaken on, pumped more life into. When it almost dies and goes away, here we are again. Most of the rumor and speculation occurred during holes in investigative updates from the Moscow Police Department. Lies and conjectures spun wildly inside the information vacuum, even though it had been only days since Chief Fry's last press conference. Even the mainstream media wasn't above winging it when the facts weren't available. Between official updates, they interviewed ex law enforcement agents with expertise in homicide investigation, but these experts sometimes set aside critical analysis in favor of their own titillating speculation. One ex agent regurgitated the rumors that Kaylee had had a stalker, even though the Moscow PD had already debunked the theory. The former agent had gotten his information from days old news. Sometimes more insightful was the commentary on Facebook by those would-be agents too young or uncredentiated to participate in official law enforcement circles. In a forum dedicated to the case, somebody posted a blown-up photo of Kaylee's wrist, isolating her smartwatch. Within hours, hundreds of commenters discussed whether the watch, perhaps synced to an Alexa or other digital concierge, might have recorded the sound of Kaylee's murder. screams in the dark, or a tussle that caused the watch's recorder to activate. The line of inquiry was unique to our time, but not to be discarded simply because it originated on non traditional investigative platforms. In fact, while retired agents tended to focus on their commentary on the headlines fed to them by corporate anchors, social media sleuths acted independently, which could be more conducive to investigative creativity. In the Facebook photo, Kaylee's watch brought to mind the information rich black boxes aviation investigators dig from the rubble after airplane crashes. Was she wearing her watch at the time of her death? If so, what did it try to tell her? Did it vibrate, for instance, when Kaylee's heart rate exceeded the optimum beats per minute? Oh, dear God, I hope this doesn't start up again by me reading this. I really do. I really do. I hope it doesn't start up again. Um, did y'all remember that part where people were just focusing on her watch? What did her heartbeat sound like after 4 a.m. in the loneliest of hours? When John Gilliam, a formidable looking former Navy SEAL and FBI agent, appeared on Fox News, the anchor began the interview by stating, "The headline today really is that there isn't one. There's no information on who committed this crime." She was referring to the Moscow PD's recent policy of withholding case details and progress reports from the media, as well as from family members of the victims, essentially shutting them out of their investigation and shutting the viewing public out too. Gilliam interjected, "I don't blame them at all. The family members have been on the podcast, they've been on newscasts, and law enforcement is going to automatically pull back on the information they provide if that occurs." What he was most interested in talking about was the killer. The perp would be a young male, Gillian speculated, and somebody who was probably odd to be around, who made people feel uncomfortable. Wow. Chapter 35. Did we ever feel did you ever feel, chat, that this individual would have been a little odd or a little hard to be around? Did y'all ever feel that way? I don't remember that guy, but it sounds like he got it pretty right on point. Chapter 35. Steve Gonsalves understood the need for more eyeballs on his daughter's case, and he did the news circuit more frequently now, appearing sometimes twice daily, usually by split screen, but sometimes in person with national news correspondents braving the snow to meet him. On air, Gonsalves frequently accused the Moscow PD of moving slowly to find a suspect, and he praised social media sleuths for their diligence. On camera, he looked agitated, anxious, or on the verge of tears, and sometimes all three. Y'all might, if you're not hearing me correctly, y'all might turn up your YouTube video that this is streaming on. Sometimes y'all turn that down and it causes it to sound low. Gonsalves said he was praying that the extra attention, the million chattering, would lead to finding Kaylee's killer, because it looked to him as if the Moscow PD's relatively inexperienced homicide team might let the case go cold. And you know what's interesting is with all the speculation and all the so-called investigating, nobody led it to Pullman and then Pennsylvania. Nobody. Not one person. Not one person. Chief Fry went to the local Fox station to address the fears. "This case is not going cold," he smirked. "We have tips coming in. We have investigators out every day interviewing people. We're still reviewing evidence. We're still looking at all aspects. No stone will go unturned." He'd been working around the clock and he cared about the families. I'm a dad, he said, his eyes filled with tears. With daughters, he added, and that's tough. His small town police department had been raked across the coals by mainstream media that week. He talked about visiting crime scenes like the one at 1122 King Road, where human Fry said, "We don't go to these and just turn it off. It affects us. But we have a job to do, and we're going to continue to do that job. We're going to continue to push forward." He wanted his community, and most important, the families of the victims, to know that the police department was doing everything it could. Chief Fry would find whoever was responsible for the murders. That was the promise he'd made. Kaylee's family couldn't take it on faith. They continued making appearances, and Christy, Steve, and their elder daughter, Olivia, sat with Brian Enton at the Gonsalves home in North Idaho on December 3rd, 2022. The furniture in their living room was country clean, with a throw designed like an American flag draped over a bench. They sat on a leather couch, a large poster board mounted photograph of Kaylee behind them. Kaylee's and Maddie's ashes were in containers next to each other on a shelf. Maddie's family had wanted it that way for now. The Gonsalves had been growing impatient with the police department's lack of transparency about their progress and about their suspect list. Is there anyone that you have a weird feeling about that the girls knew or that comes to mind? Enton asked. Not an immediate circle, Olivia stated, but a few of the names that have been circulating around, I think it's hard not to dig into. I don't know how much of that is because we have so little information from law enforcement and how much of it is a sister or a father's intuition. Christy Gonsalves said she felt as if the police had been too quick to clear a number of acquaintances of the victims. Kaylee's sister agreed, but carefully added that Jack DeCur, Kaylee's on again, off again, had the full support of their family despite online rumors. Other acquaintances had provided alibis that cleared them, but the police had not shared those alibis with the Gonsalves family. If they had, Steve said, the family might have felt more comfortable with the rigor of their process. I don't know what would prevent you from sharing somebody's alibi, Kaylee's father said. I think that's what we're struggling with, Olivia agreed. Kaylee's mother began to cry during the interview, the strings of her turquoise-hued hoodie tied in a bow, her auburn hair in a ponytail. It's terrible, she said. I cannot fathom in my head what kind of person did this and why. Her daughter rubbed her arm periodically. See, I didn't watch this interview, so I really don't remember any of that. I mean, I've seen it over time and other people's stuff, but I didn't watch that interview. And to say is that why wouldn't they share an alibi, other people's alibi? I mean, it's really not relative to the family to know that at that point, I believe. I could be wrong. But all it did, it just put other people into starting to speculate, since they don't want to share the alibi, that these people must be involved or whatever they wanted it to mean. Um, Enton noted that the Gonsalves were postponing Kaylee's funeral until a killer was caught. They couldn't move forward, they had said, with the thought of somebody still out there, oh, excuse me, in the shadows. Are you nervous at all? Enton asked. Because in Moscow, we talked to students. People are really nervous there. They should be, Steve interrupted. He went to talk about the Moscow police department use of the word targeted to describe the killings. He didn't like that. He felt that the terminology pitted the parents of each victim against one another. If Kaylee had been a target, for instance, did the other parents harbor resentment against the Gonsalves family? Worse again, Kaylee. It was a tough question to wrestle with while mourning their daughter. Of all the things for the Moscow police to go public with, this one stung. Anton suggested maybe that was just a way to calm people down. I feel like it was strategic, Gonzalez agreed. If the killings hadn't been random, that would reassure students that they had nothing to fear. Nobody was coming for them next. It was a strategic way to keep people from hitting the door, transferring out, and turning that place into a ghost town. Even with Fry's statements, many students had returned to campus with trepidation. They walked in groups now. They carried weapons in their backpacks. They looked over their shoulders when they walked home at night. Snow had recently covered the impromptu flower memorials that had been placed around the U of I campus. You never think you're going to lose your little sister. Never, Olivia said. You never think you're going to have to bury your daughter. Absolutely unbelievable, Christy said. She wiped the hair from her face. Her wedding ring sparkled. She closed her eyes, breaking into tears. Chapter 36. Hey JB, how you doing? Some would throw anyone and everyone under the bus for a view. And it did cause a lot of controversy. Yes, Rondi, it's crazy that some of the creators are saying people actually believe them for some reason. What's scary to me is that so many people follow and believe what creators say is the Bible. But who subscribed to this? Chapter 36. Fry hadn't revealed much about his investigation, but by the end of November, the Moscow PD already had a suspect on their radar. It would take another month before anybody outside of law enforcement would know it, and that was intentional. On November 25th, 12 days after the murders, the Moscow PD asked area law enforcement agencies to be on the lookout for the white sedan that forensic examiners now believe to be a Hyundai Elantra. Only 4 days later, on November 29th, Washington State University police officer Daniel Tiengo looked into white Elantras registered at WSU. He found one registered to a PhD candidate, Brian Koberger, who lived in student apartment complex. Another WSU officer, Curtis Whitman, was also looking for Elantras on that date and found the same vehicle while patrolling. It was parked at the Steptoe Village Apartments. The Hyundai looked, oh, son of a gun, 12? The Hyundai both officers had identified had Washington state plates on front and back, but records showed that on the date of the murders, the vehicle had been registered in Pennsylvania, where the no front plate was required. The out-of-state student had changed his vehicle registration to Washington just over a week ago. Koberger's Washington state driver's license information was reviewed by police. He was a white male, 6 feet tall and 185 pounds. He fit the general description provided to investigators by Dylan Mortensen. So, of all the crimes that everybody watches, the crime shows and everything that individuals watch, at this point, when they look at a driver's license and they see that he matches the prototype of the description that a surviving roommate gave as a potential perpetrator, every show you've ever watched, every one, right? Do they not instantly put him as a potential suspect? Do they not start adding pieces to see if this is indeed the person or it is not? Do they not? Tell me I'm wrong because you know I'm right. Any place that you've ever seen somebody be, let's say, okay, we got this person's driver's license. He meets the general consensus of the perpetrator as stated by the surviving victim. Then all of a sudden, boom, he's the height, the weight, the general description. He drives a white Elantra, which you obviously saw on video. Doesn't necessarily make him the dude, but when it comes to forming an investigation, it gives you a great start, wouldn't you say? What do you think, chat? Do you think it would give them a great start? Or do you think they just got lucky and said, oh, we're going to frame this guy because he's the only Elantra that we found without a state plates, and bingo, he meet the criteria, so therefore we're going to frame this dude. Let's frame this dude. No, they didn't do it like that. They didn't do it like that. Thank you for agreeing with me, Texas. Thank you for agreeing, Mountain Mama and Rondi. You know, I believe that that's how every investigation in the country goes down. They don't go from, okay, we got this, so now we're going to start to build an investigative trail on this individual to not only see if he's the perpetrator, but to eliminate him from being a potential perp. So that's their code of investigation. And I've always said it, and people never freaking hear it because they don't want to hear it. They try to eliminate these perps, not only to make sure that this person doesn't meet the criteria that you're looking for, even though it looks like it, more than, okay, we're going to zero in and pigeonhole this guy to be our guy. I hope that makes a little sense. Evidence of driving a white Elantra and having the approximate stature and look of their suspected killer would make the case, but Fry's task force started running Koberger down. His studies in criminology were notable to the cops. They already had Koberger's cell number. He'd been stopped by police for a minor driving violation in Moscow on August 21st. They ran a cell through their databases and found that it had been issued by AT&T, which they served with a narrow warrant to identify any of the company's numbers that had pinged or utilized, in this instance, the towers servicing King Road at the approximate time of the murders. Fry's team was hoping that Koberger's cell phone would place him at the location of the four student death. What they found was the opposite, that between 3 a.m. and nearly 5 a.m. on November 13th, Koberger's cell used no towers at all, meaning it had likely been turned off, but only for that period. So, once again, I hate to keep harping on this stuff because to me it's very generic and very understandable. But to a lot of people, they seem not to understand it. They want to circumvent every little bit that they read, or that, as I'm reading right now, they're probably going, see, his phone wasn't on from 3 to 5. So how could they have proved that that cell phone was in the area of the King Road house or in the murders? Okay, well, look at it this way, smartasses. If it wasn't at the house, where was it from 3 to 5? You have to be able to answer those questions too in an investigation. You just don't go one dimensional. You have to answer all the questions around the circumstances. Okay, if it wasn't at the house, it wasn't visible anywhere else, where was it? Where was it? Yeah, those storms are kind of vicious. And I asked all of you, where was this phone? If you don't believe that he's the one, or I'm not trying to say that one way or the other tonight. I'm really not. Just reading this book. But these things are jumping out at me. And I'm just like, look, from 3 to 5, his phone used no towers at all. So where was this damn phone? Because you don't want to put this man in jeopardy of saying that he was the killer. Wouldn't you think if you weren't the killer, you would be able to tell the cops when they were interviewing you or interrogating you where you were from 3 to 5? Where was your phone from 3 to 5, Mr. Koberger? Where was that phone at? Because we have it on no network whatsoever. None. Yeah, exactly, Michelle. Work from the inside out. You have to work every possibility, you know? Where was that phone? And that's going to be the big question that I want people to answer from here on out because you can't answer it. You can't. I can't answer it. So, how can you definitively tell me in an argument that this was not the guy when neither one of us can decide where this phone was? If it wasn't at his residence and supposedly it was turned off or not responding to a network, and we've later found out that this phone was not dead by any means, that the battery was almost 98% when it was turned back on, where the hell was this phone? Where was it? Anybody in the chat venture to go down that rabbit hole with me? Where was this phone? And what was causing it not to respond to any towers in Moscow, in Pullman, the one by his home, by the university, any of that? Where was this phone at? Yeah, I asked myself that. Is it possible or is it probable? Yeah, you're right. He better get to proving where it wasn't then. I mean, seriously. You can't tell me. It's like, okay, you say this phone just bam at from 3 to 5, there's no kind of usage at all. Can you tell me where that phone was? Where were you? That's even a bigger question. Where was he? F the phone. Where was he from 3 to 5? Because I believe that we put so much emphasis on this phone and whether it's going to clear him or whether it's going to convict him, all this, that. Where was he? Because it was a murder that took place and the phone didn't kill him. Though the person that killed 4 people and walked into that home and committed a burglary as well. Where was he? Battery pulled, turned off, or, you know what I mean? Where was he? Because nobody has ever said there's been talk of Koberger being over here or over here. They'll tell you, other people, and I've heard people state, they will tell you he was stargazing and all this other stuff. But let me ask you something. Let's say he was stargazing. Let's say he was hiking and he was doing all that. But his phone was off for 2 hours during that. So he can't prove that he was there either. You can't prove you were at home. You can't prove that you were stargazing. And you can't prove that you were out there by Way Park. You can't prove any of that. Where were you? Where were you? Firefly, would you care to chime in on that question? Because I don't know where he was. But people act like they know exactly where this man was. So from 3 to 5, if he wasn't near the murder house, Supposedly he was out stargazing. Wouldn't you have your phone on if you were out in the middle of nowhere like that park? I mean, at least long enough to, you know, just in case. I mean, you never know. Yeah, that's what I just said as well. His battery was at 90% power too. I mean, enough about the phone though, really. I mean, do you have any kind of definitive theory on where he was? If the phone wasn't at 11:22, where was he at? Because if you say I was at home sleeping, which probably would have been a better damn explanation. I was at home sleeping, my phone died. There you go. Who can prove that? Who cannot? You know what I mean? But to say that you were out stargazing and you were out driving around, that just doesn't make sense to me. And nobody seems to act like that's not a big deal either. They just seem to say, well, wasn't around the house, so he's cleared. Okay, but where was he at? If his phone wasn't there, where was he at? Did he leave his phone somewhere else and then go back and get it and then turn it on? Nah, couldn't have happened that way. Let's see. The only good reason to take a battery out is to take the phone apart or to replace it. Shoot, I wouldn't even know how to take a battery out of a smartphone nowadays. I really wouldn't. Since his phone was off in Pullman and back on their Genesee Blaine, I'd say he was somewhere in between logically. I like the way you think. I really do. I really do. I mean, and that's for no other reason than that just it's logical, right? Don't it take some kind of special tool to take out the battery in a phone? I would think so, but we don't know what kind of phone he has. He could have one of those flip phones for all we know. Those old school flip phones. I mean, nobody really knows what kind of phone he had. Just enough that it was reporting to the network. But I would think it was a smartphone if he had a Strativa or whatever that running app was. I don't think you could get that on a flip phone. But I'm going to go on. That just really just, I mean, you don't care where the phone was, but you don't, you're saying he was at the park, but yet, how could you be at the park without your phone? So neither place is going to be able to, tell exactly where you are because you're telling me the phone can be pinged by the park when it's off, but it can't be pinged near the house when it's off. How does that work? That's what people want you to believe. I've replaced a few batteries on iPhones. Okay. Also, a minute after he reconnected to the network, he signed into a VPN to disguise his location. That's not suspect, is it? That's not suspect, is it? He may have turned it off before sleep, like many people at that hour. He may have turned his phone off intentionally before committing his crime to prevent law enforcement from tracking it. The initial AT&T subpoena had covered only the towers near the murder house. The absence of information on Koberger during these hours justified the filing of a broader warrant to obtain Koberger's full cell records between November 12th and November 14th, the day before and after the murders. This took time to get. Days had already passed with Fry biting his tongue, not able to talk publicly about this promising lead that pointed to a criminology student. Court records later suggested that the task force had put Koberger under surveillance, although their methods were kept secret. If this is true, then listen, they created a task force and put him under surveillance. I don't know if I've heard that before. Have y'all? Did y'all know about this task force? When they finally became available, the AT&T records confirmed that those approximately 2 early morning hours were the only time Koberger's phone had been turned off. It was a good piece of circumstantial evidence. He seemed to have been intentionally evading cell towers. So, I'm a thinking man, all right? I'm a thinker. If you have all these cell phone data and all these pings and all these things that are going on with this phone, and then all of a sudden you notice that this phone is near this area at this time and leaves this time, 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 and then the night of the murders, it starts off here, turned off for 2 hours, and then turned back on south of where the murders took place. In a pattern of investigation, would that not look suspicious to you? Would that not look suspicious? You might have. I don't know if I've ever heard of it, but you might have. Yeah, why would he be using a VPN at 5 in the morning? But you get what I'm saying? If you're looking at his phone data and you're seeing this and this, this and this, this and this, this and this, it all correlate together. And then on the night of the murders, it starts off and then it shuts off for 2 hours and then turns back on, starts pinging south of the murder house in Blaine or Genesee. That big old circle right there, those 2 hours, isn't suspicious at all. Where was he? What was he doing? Would that 2 hours would it have taken him 2 hours to get from his apartment, wherever the phone last pinged, to wherever he was when the phone turned on? Was that a 2 hour drive? If it was not, then what was he doing for 2 hours? What was he doing for 2 hours? If he was not caught on any other camera, what was he doing for 2 hours? Do people even ask themselves these type of questions, or do they just not even think that far? Because it is 2 hour or 2 years and something later. You'd think by now you'd be asking these type of questions to yourself. If you still thought that you understood this case, you'd be asking, well, where was he for 2 hours? Where was his phone for 2 hours? Because most people that I know of do not leave their phone for 2 hours unattended, unless you're an elderly individual and you don't get a lot of phone calls or you don't play a lot of games on your phone. You can literally sit there and let your phone go dead and you'd never miss it because you don't really interact with it that much. But most people at 28, they would have their phone on them everywhere they were. When they finally became available, the AT&T records confirmed that those approximately two early morning hours were the only time Koberger's phone had been turned off. It was a good piece of circumstantial evidence he seemed to have been intentionally evading cell towers. The AT&T records also showed that the user of Koberger's phone, presumably Koberger, was traveling away from Koberger's apartment at approximately 2:47 a.m. on November 13th, and then south through Pullman when the phone stopped reporting to the network, either switched into airplane mode or turned off. It began reporting to the network again at 4:48 a.m., less than 30 minutes after the murders, when it pinged on US 95 south of Moscow. So I ask you again, we know that this 47 has been turned into 254 because it's 7 minutes. So I'll give you that. Let's go 254 to 4:48. So in that time frame, you're telling me that nobody has ever asked where he was for that time frame, because he was obviously leaving his home. So he can't say he was home. Can't say he was going grocery shopping. What was open at that time? I think I've heard the only thing open that late is Winco. But did he walk around Winco for 2 hours and then keep driving south? He was heading south on 95. He wasn't heading north, so he wasn't going the other way around. He was heading south. So, I mean, I'm not an idiot, but by no means, but that just doesn't sound right to me that he would not be leaving Moscow heading south on 95. But we have so many people that can't see that. They will not see that. Cell phone jammer. Oh my. They're waiting for someone to tell them why that would happen. Well, that's interesting to me, I would think. And I always thought that. If you were caught leaving your house at this point, he would have been smarter just turning his damn phone off in his apartment and leaving it there and then coming back and turning it back on where his phone was at his apartment. The phone never moved. You can't have proof that he was even gone from the apartment. If you do see a white Elantra, you can kind of dispute, hey, that wasn't me. I was home sleeping. But he didn't do that. And you have to ask yourself, what caused him not to do that? Could he have turned it off while driving? Of course he could have. We got 7 minutes from that court hearing. So instead of 47, it's at 54 officially that the phone went off. He was up to some sort of fuckery with his phone that night. I like that. So here we go. It said the phone pinged towers in a circuitous route through the countryside before returning to Koberger's residence in Pullman, where the phone pinged again at approximately 5:30 a.m. and stayed there for several hours. So you don't want people to know where you were for that 2 hour interval, or even to say that, you don't, man, I was out just driving around by the park. I lost cell tower, whatever, coverage. Okay, well, what were you doing in Genesee at 4:48 heading south? If you were coming from the park, you would have been heading north, unless you cut across and then started back down and around. But that still doesn't make sense. What are you doing driving in the middle of nowhere with your phone off? And then he finally gets home at 5:30 a.m. Stayed there for several hours. Then cell tower activity at approximately 9 a.m. showed Kerberger's phone traveling away from his residence again and returning to Moscow. It pinged a tower servicing the King Road residence at 9:12. So this time he didn't turn the damn phone off. So how are you going to dispute that one? Do you get what I'm saying, guys? Are y'all with me, chat? How are you going to dispute the 912 one? We can have all kinds of experts saying this, that, and the other about the 2 hour window, but how are you going to dispel the 23 times and the 9:12 a.m. pinging by the King Road residents? How are you going to say that wasn't me? That wasn't my phone? Because you don't think that they found camera footage of him in the daytime driving past the same routes he drove in the middle of the night If his phone was around that residence in the morning, they would have clear camera footage of the white Elantra. And if that Elantra didn't have tinted windows, so therefore they could even have clear visual of Mr. Koberger's face. But that just is that deep diving? Is that too speculatory? That diving too much without factual information. The pure fact that he didn't turn it off before he left home or just leave it at home makes me think he was up to some deception with the phone. You would think he wanted to be caught. Plus, he allegedly said, they have my phone, GPS, and can see where I was or some such BS. So that shows he isn't in the habit of shutting phone off. So why the hell shut it off the other time if he wasn't up to no good? Or he just an idiot? I don't know. I don't know. I'm just asking these questions because nobody talks about this. Nobody. They don't talk about the daytime ping, the 912. They don't talk about the 912. Right here, 9:12 a.m. It pinged the tower servicing the King Road residence at 9:12. So, astoundingly, the records suggested that Koberger may have been to the murder scene that morning, hours after the crimes had been committed, or at least his phone had. It continued to ping the King Road tower until 9:21 when he departed again. So where was he going from 9:12 to 9:21? Where was he going? Where was Koberger going? If his phone pinged next to the King Road residence at 9:12 and was around that area till 9:21, but in the PCA it states after that point he never pinged again in Moscow. Never. His phone never pinged again. So all those people, excuse me, all those people that can say, well, his phone could have pinged from his residence to Moscow. It was that close. No, sir. No, sir. If that was possible, then his phone would have pinged again after the murders, identical to the pings that they had before the murders. If that was the fact, if that was the truth. But it never pinged again after the murders. So you can't tell me that that logic rules in this place. It doesn't. Because if that was your logic, then he would have pinged after the murders. But in the PCA, it specifically states his phone never pinged again in Moscow after the murders. So, you know, it's all these things do not mean that, police were inept. So if you allow yourself to be with your phone at 9:12 pinging off this damn tower near the King Road residence, were you driving around that neighborhood again trying to get up the gumption to go back into that residence to look for your sheath? Or what were you doing? 9:12 to 9:21. Somebody do the math for me. How that 9 minutes? So for 9 minutes, what were you doing? That's almost the same amount of time as it took the individual to commit the crime. So what were you doing for 9 minutes pinging off this tower next to King Road? What were you doing? But nobody talks about that. Nobody talks about that. How I'm talking about it now, and I've never talked about it because I always thought that he only went one time, and that was 9:30. I don't know where I got 9:30 from. I never knew about the 9:12 to 9:21 until now, honestly. Looking for reporters and first responders. Very, very possible. I mean, that's 9 minutes. Hoping to see people gathering at the scene. 9 minutes replaying the crime in his head. Very good point. Well, let me ask you this as well. Am I a fool to think in the daytime because by 9:12 it is daylight, or at least it's overcast or something. But it's bright enough to capture your vehicle, correct? If you passed that A&W camera, if you went the same route, you passed Ridge Road, you passed all those cameras, 11, 12 again. Let's say you went into the neighborhood and circled around a little bit. Don't you think that those cameras would have captured a much better, clearer version of the vehicle? I'm asking you, chat. Do you think that those cameras could have possibly captured a better shot of that vehicle in the area? Yeah. Judging by the selfie at 10:30, he was still psyched up. Yes. I think he was hoping he dropped the sheath, getting in or out of his car, searching for the sheath. You betcha. Yeah. That's what I think too. So if he drove by the same route, which my mind states in my head, thinking if he was that compulsive, he would have drove the same route, back and forth and back to his residence, because he was not gone that much. He was not gone as long where his phone was pinging 9:21, and he was back at his residence by, I think, what was it, 10:20 or something? I don't know, some weird number around there. But he took the selfie at 10:30, so he was possibly there a little earlier, taking a shower, or whatever. UPS truck got his tag number on truck camera. Okay, no front plate at all, and all. Okay, so it's feasible. I'm not saying it happened, okay? So I don't want to start any new rumors or anything like that. But in my mind, it's feasible based on what this reading says. If he was pinged off that tower at 9:12 to 9:21, that tells me that he could have been seen, or his vehicle could have been seen in that location on a camera a lot clearer than the nighttime camera. So maybe the nighttime camera has some validity, but maybe that's the boom that we might get to see later on, as we saw you during the morning. I don't know though. I don't know. I'd never heard of the UPS driver either. That's interesting. Let me continue on. It says, astoundingly, the record suggested that Koberger may have been to the murder scene that morning, hours before the crimes had been committed, or at least his phone had. It continued to ping the King Road tower until 9:21 a.m. when he departed again. While it appeared that Koberger had visited the area around 11:22 King Road for 9 minutes that Sunday morning, what he was doing there only he knew. The police had not yet been called to the crime scene, and the house would have looked almost exactly as it had the night before, only now he would be viewing it in daylight. The police department now tracked his cell tower pings even further back and discovered he had made a dozen visits to the home in the month leading up to the murders, primarily under the cover of darkness. One visit occurred in the late night hours prior to his August 21st traffic stop. His phone had pinged the King Road cell tower for over an hour. It appeared that he'd been pulled over on his way home. Not surprisingly, time codes of the video surveillance of the Elantra appeared to sync tidily with the cell tower data collected by investigators. So, if he was shown in the area before his traffic stop for an hour, and then you pull him over and you sync all this stuff up, and all this stuff circulating around a white Elantra, phone pings, general description, front license plate being gone, all this stuff is just adding up. They're investigating a murder. They're not doing it by emotion. They're investigating a murder. Quadruple at that. So if they're investigating a quadruple murder. Is this not adding up against him? And this is even before the DNA on the knife sheath. We haven't even talked about the DNA yet. This is just general old school surveillance type stuff. Backtracking, cameras, pings, all this old school stuff. So old school, they got all this information. The mens rea of Brian Koberger. The state of mind of Brian Koberger. So tell me, if you're watching this and you don't believe that he is the one, which is fine, tell me how you would explain away all this evidence that I'm talking about right now. How would you explain that his phone pinged near the residence from 9:12 to 9:21, right the morning after the murders? How would you explain that his phone pinged near the residence for an hour and then he was pulled over on his way home? How would you explain this stuff? That's how I always ask people. If you want me to see your point of view, this is how I need you to explain it to me, because then I can see a different variety rather than what I'm seeing, because I'm capable of that. But if you just drop in, say, BK is innocent or free BK or he was framed, that doesn't show me a lot. Now, if you're able to tell me, well, at 9:12, he could have been eating at a restaurant and he ate for 9 minutes and left close to the residence, well, I might could buy that. But was there any place open at 9 in the morning on a Sunday morning? You know? Let me see what you guys are saying. Was he casing the place, and all those past pings back and forth all sound like he was practicing time distant, how long it would take to get from home to scene? Yeah. I love Dexter, by the way. Who said Dexter? Oh my God, sort of off topic, but I've always been a huge fan of the show Dexter. Yeah, I love that show. I just discovered this prequel to the series. It is Dexter at the stage where he is wanting to kill and actually complete his first kill. Some very interesting comparison to BK along the way. Exactly. I was framed, I swear. I really think there will be so much come out at trial. If you notice, the prosecution doesn't get rattled at all. I think it's because they have enough evidence to get a conviction. I believe that. And the more I read this book, Mountain Mama, it's like all this stuff right here just coming together in my mind. And I'm like, okay, I'm trying to see the other side's perspective. I'm trying to see that there's no way he could have done it. No way it could have been the Elantra. No way this and that. But then I think, okay, well, if the phone went back there in the morning, that means that he either ran, which he was probably saying, or did he get a ride from somebody else and still took his phone? Regardless, he was in the area. You get what I'm saying? Like, he didn't turn that phone off. And that might be the thing that really gets him, is the pattern of his phone pings. The police department now tracked his cell pings even further back and discovered he had made a dozen visits to the home in the months leading up to the murders, primarily under the cover of darkness. One visit, and this is the one I just read, one visit occurred in the late night hours prior to his August 21st traffic stop. His phone had pinged the King Road cell tower for over an hour. It appeared that he'd been pulled over on his way home. Not surprisingly, time codes of video surveillance of the Elantra appeared to sync tidily with the cell tower data collected by investigators. Where the phone went, so had the white Hyundai Elantra. It traveled away from Koberger's residence at 2:44 a.m. As observed on WSU campus security cameras. The phone had pinged that same area at 2:47, indicative of the phone and the car traveling together. While the phone was turned off, the vehicle continued to trigger footage as it moved toward the King Road residence. The Hyundai had made its speedy departure from the scene at 4:20 a.m. Approximately 28 minutes after the murders, when the phone was turned back on, the white Hyundai Elantra and the phone were synced by cell towers in the video surveillance. They were taking the same route. The conclusion seemed obvious. Brian Koberger had left his apartment, turned off his phone, then driven to the murder house where he had likely killed Kaylee Gonsalves, Madison Mogan, Dana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin. After the murders, he had sped away. He traveled deep into the countryside for approximately an hour before returning home. And in full daylight later that morning, he had briefly returned to the crime scene. Full daylight. Fry's team had a lot of questions they still couldn't answer. What had Koberger been doing in the hour immediately after the crime, driving through a countryside so dark that if he pulled to the side and cut his headlights, his eyes would have struggled to focus? Had he picked the murder weapon, his clothes? They would have to wait for those answers, and they would need more evidence before they could initiate an arrest. But the evidence was accumulating by the day, almost more important than the rest of what they'd been tracking. Koberger's name had appeared in the recently obtained genetic genealogy results Fry's team had been awaiting. The DNA left behind on the knife sheath was a match to Koberger's family line. There was one small problem. Koberger had left the area weeks ago. And that's where I'm going to stop on chapter 37. What do y'all think about this book? Pretty cool, huh? Pretty cool. Wow, y'all are chatting it up. Nina, you want to come on panel and talk about this a little bit with me? Are you somewhere where you can't? I mean, I know you got used to doing Restream. He just fit the profile of a killer so perfectly. No alibi, creepy behavior, sketchy past behavior, so much more. He brought the phone and left the sheath. All the movement of that night, phone conveniently off at the correct time. Yep, overzealous and made mistakes, brought phone and all chances he left sheath there. Very interesting. It's a good one, 12. Link me up. We're going to talk about what I've been reading, not what any other thing, okay? I want to continue that conversation because it's interesting to me all of a sudden. Not that it hasn't ever been, but you know when you discover something and you're like, wow, that's pretty amazing right there. I never thought of that, or I never knew that. Because even 2.5 years later, I don't claim to know every little aspect of this crime. I don't. I try to learn as much as possible to do the live stream for you guys, but as far as being one of those that just deep dives all day long, I don't do it. I can't. I have too much else going on. But I'm stuck on that right now. I am really stuck on that. 9:12 to 9:21. What do y'all think about that 9 minutes? That is going to be my thing now. They got their 7 minutes. I'm going to put my 9-minute theory. And y'all probably talked about that before. So I'm like 2.5 years behind, but it doesn't matter. That's what I'm going to call it. My 9-minute theory. So for 9 minutes in broad daylight, is that not bold? Is that not bold to any of y'all in the chat? Is that bold to you? Or does that seem, you know, no, I'm not trying to get to the why. I'm just trying to see, to show that, in that 9 minutes, what was he doing for that 9 minutes? And he surely would have been seen by cameras. And we haven't heard any of this about any of this. I wonder if they captured any video, any screenshots. Because now we know that there's a camera on Ridge Road. So if he didn't go that direction, there's only so many ways in and there's only so many ways out. You know? Yes, the next morning. Yeah, that morning. Well, I mean, we really don't know what he was doing, but I'm saying like it's interesting to talk about that 9 minute theory, like in that 9 minutes. Because to me, I never really always thought it only pinged one time and that was at 9:30. And in the PCA it stated well the police knew where his phone was. That really wasn't relevant. You know what I mean? Hey Nina.
Hey, sweetie, what you doing?
Well, I'm reading and I'm over here intrigued for a minute.
What you intrigued about?
That 9 minutes.
Got 9 minutes. There's a lot that can happen in 9 minutes.
You know that 9 minutes he supposedly pinged near
Uh
the King
huh.
Road residence at 9:12 to 9:21.
That's the next morning, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So you remember in the PCA they said that, you know, they had his phone in the area, but they knew where he was.
Right. See, that's the reason that when I put in chat the 601 Washington Street, the Umpqua Bank, if you go to the street view, it has a beautiful street view.
What is it?
It's Umpqua Bank. It's at 601 Washington Street and the intersection of Washington Street and 6th Street or 6th Avenue. And
Okay.
it's the Umpqua Bank. So
So
if
what
he
is it?
went, okay, you come across 8, I think it's 8, and then I think it's 95 that goes south, which is also up in town. 95 is Washington Street.
So
And so if you come,
what's the relevance of that bank?
because you know, when I saw it, I was like, oh my gosh, more financials. They're asking for all the outside security cameras.
So do you believe that he returned back to the neighborhood at
Yes,
9:12?
yes, I do.
Okay.
I,
I
I,
mean,
I mean, I think.
reading this, it makes me think also that he returned back there. What
Oh
makes you
yeah, I
think
think he
that?
went back there to check out. I figured he figured by 9:30 that the crowd was already. The reporters were there. It was a big woo-ha.
So do you believe that he could have like parked the car and went and walked up there and stood in the crowd?
Okay, there, and I know that we don't really pay attention to inside looking and Papa Roger, but there's another one, and his name is Rocket Surgeon, and it's actually him. It's a vehicle, and they're sitting there, and he's like, "Oh, it looks like the fog will lift tomorrow," and it's a picture of 1112, and it's blurred out, and he's trying to be funny. It looks like the fog will clear tomorrow or something like that. But anyway, he's got some little interesting little lines talking about the next day and stuff like that.
Okay. But I I agree with you, Firefly. I agree with that wholeheartedly. I believe that, if he did return back to the residence at 9:12 as this book states, then he would have passed all these cameras. There's no
Right.
way that these cameras wouldn't have got a clear visual of that freaking
Yeah,
launch.
especially the one that I looked at Umpqua Bank. Uh, I mean, it would have had just a downright clear view. I mean,
There's no way
and
it
then
wouldn't have.
they did the warrant for all the UPS truck cameras.
Well, what about the truck camera? I saw you put that in chat. What did you mean by
Yeah,
that?
it's a little 3 or 4 minute video that I did, and it's the cameras that I think that got him, and
Okay.
it's the street view of Umpqua Bank, and then it's the street view of what a UPS camera on a truck sees.
Yeah,
And
I've seen that.
if a UPS truck got behind him, that
I've
tag
seen that.
number is brighter than you can believe. I opened the door before I came live, so I wouldn't have to do doggy duty. You can go your butt right out that door. It's open. She's getting on the couch. She said, "Okay, forget that.
That dog's like, I don't want to mess with you.
Come on."
Reading this book, it talks about some different stuff. Like last night I had read where Xana's dad had replaced the front door lock, not Xana's door. Why would this author lie about something like that? You get what I'm saying?
Well, now see, I thought that him changing the lock had been debunked.
Well, the book says he came to change the front door lock of the
Huh.
house. That's what I read last night. And many people had stated that the thing was going around is Xana had some break-ins or whatever, people going through her stuff. So her dad changed the door lock on her door, and I'd always heard that that wasn't true.
See, that's what I'd always heard. That's the reason when I talk about it, I don't never mention because I've never been able to like confirm it.
Right. But I mean, I just read that last night, so I didn't make that up. You know what I mean?
Well, no, I know
So
that.
you know
Hell,
what
I
I'm
know
saying? It's
that.
like I'm not sitting here making stuff up to have content.
If I thought if I mean if anybody if I would ever think nope, you would never do that in a million years. Never,
Right.
ever. You're one of
Well, I
those. You
mean,
don't need that bad.
my
Contact.
mind is
You don't need contact that bad.
my mind is really blown right now. I cannot tell you how much it's blown. Like, and then I said, well, you heard me say, well, could he have possibly gotten a ride from somebody else, came back and, walked around the premises or whatever, looking for the sheath, gotten in the vehicle, and then drove back to Pullman? I mean,
Right. That would mean he
that,
had a friend.
well, he had an acquaintance, the Korean girl. I'm sure she was into him. So,
True.
because listen, I'm not one about spreading lies or anything like that, but I'd heard
No.
I had heard very early on that somebody had stated that Brian and the Korean girl had been spotted at Walmart in Pullman the next morning of the murder. So that's
See,
why I
I had
said
heard that too. We must listen to the same people.
possibly. Yeah, someone had the video just saying he changed the lock. Yeah.
You listen to
So
Grok 3, don't you?
do what?
No, I said you listen to Grok 3.
I don't
I'm
even
just,
remember where I heard that. Like that was very early on in the beginning. Like it was crazy. I didn't believe that. I was like, "There's no way." He was with the token Asian chick in Pullman.
oh, oh my God.
You know what I mean? The token Asian. He was with
In
her in Pullman. So, because the way people were making it sound, there was only one Asian in Pullman, and she was it.
Well, don't forget too, we still got Kaylee's smartwatch.
What do you think about that? Do you think there's capability
Well,
that
I've
they
done
got
the
in?
research on everything they can get off of a smartwatch, and if she had it, the information they can get if she had it on or off is, I mean, of course, it's different, but I mean, it could do like exact time of, that her heart stopped. It can do, but it can also work as a smartphone, I mean, so they can pretty much get as much, they can get a lot of information.
Do you believe Brian had a smartphone?
I know he had an iPad. I know he had an iPad, and I think he had an Android. But I also think that he had an iPhone too.
One of those had to be linked up to that Strativa app, right? Or whatever the hell that app is.
Strava?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, See, I think that Strava, that one little run, that one, you're like you're intrigued by the 9 a.m. And I guess mine right now is the Strava run because there's
I
only one.
I just started being intrigued by the 9:12, 9:21 morning situation. That just I don't get intrigued by a lot, but that just intrigues the hell out of me.
Yeah, it's
Like,
hard to intrigue you.
that
I
just like,
I'm going through 900 pages of information, and you're like, yeah, I got it.
yeah. But yeah, I get captivated on 9 minutes, right?
Right. What about the seven?
That's what I was telling the chat. They got their 7 minutes. I got my 9 minute theory there.
Exactly. Thank you.
They got their 7 minutes. I got my 9 minutes. So, but nobody ever talks about that 9 minute interval. They act like it's not a big deal. That his phone pinged and never pinged again after that time frame. Never. Not one time did that phone ping in Moscow ever again. So that was the last time that phone pinged from
Right.
9:12 to 9:21. The last time. Last time ever.
The last one.
Is that coincidental or was the phone destroyed? I mean, was that the real phone or was that the burner?
I told you that he was riding around trying to find a paint shop.
He's riding around what?
He was trying to find a paint shop because somebody painted his car green.
We're not going there. Stop it. You know damn well that's not true. Don't you be spreading that crap on my channel. I heard you go off a little bit last night. I was like, oh wow, she's really going right now.
Oh, did I really? Hell,
No,
I
just
was so nervous, but let me tell you something. I will never go to StreamYard again. Honey, that was my first time ever even seeing Restream. And I sit and played like 7 videos. I shared all kind of pictures.
I, s- I saw that. I saw that. I was
I
amazed,
was like, look at me, I'm a professional.
Let me put you back on camera here. Hold on a second. I'm having
Well,
to.
thank y'all, everybody, because man, after it kept saying error, I was so down. I mean, I was like the whoop little pup in the road or something. I mean,
Okay, so this is that. Thank you, Jeff, for this. This is that bank location at 609 South Washington Street. So
yes.
obviously, this is the how do you say that? Umpqua.
Umpqua. I say Umpqua. I don't know if that's right or not.
So at what location would it have caught his car? This
Okay,
way?
so yeah, because that's going south towards the house, and the bank is on the left,
Okay, so
and there's a red light right at the corner, and right there, and so you're on a one-way road. So
there's a camera right here.
oh, there's a camera. There's a camera at the Umpqua Bank. There's one on the top left corner. There's one on the top right corner, and there's one where the ATM is. And see how close it is to the road?
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, there's the ATM somewhere. I don't know. I don't see the cameras, but I believe you. I mean, honestly, I don't see them. Where would I'm kind of turned around as where this is at, and
straight into the drive-through. There's 4 cameras.
okay, so this is South Washington Street.
Yeah, Washington Street is the north-south, and then it's 6th Avenue is east-west.
You know what I thought of just now? They talked about in the paperwork that he went cash free, like
Yep.
he didn't use a
Yep.
debit card. He could have went and got money out of that bank and then drove around the house, and that would have been the 20, or that would have been the 9 minutes.
Right.
Does that make sense, or
Yeah,
is that
but I want
reaching?
to know that people putting out that the 100 meters reaches all the way to Pullman, it does not.
What'd you say?
People are trying to say the 100 meters reaches like all the way to Washington, the state of Washington.
Yeah, they are. Hey, there's a
And
restaurant right there, Chinese American food.
hey, is it vegan?
I don't know. Maybe maybe stopped in for some breakfast.
Jeff says there looks like there's two cameras above each drive-through, but I know I saw one on each corner because
Well,
the video that I've done, it shows the camera, it shows all the cameras at the what is it, the A&W root beer. It shows the cameras on Umpqua Bank. It shows the cameras in the UPS truck, and then it shows the cameras along the route.
I believe y'all. I mean, there's no
Oh, I
reason
know that.
y'all would be lying. It's just hard to see. So this is the route to the
Thank you,
house.
PKC. Thank you.
This is the route to the house.
Yeah,
This is
because
not the,
okay, when you come across 95 goes south, and that's actually 95. It's just up in town. It's called Washington.
okay. Jeff sent me the screenshot of it. Yeah, they're right above the, drive-throughs, like you are saying. That is 95.
Right.
So he would have been heading south. He would have been turned
Yes.
around, heading that direction toward Blaine and Genesee, right? So this is
Yes.
downtown.
Yes.
This
And
okay.
right above there is where the grub truck would be.
Yeah. Okay. Wow, this is close.
Yeah.
This is close. So
Yeah. That's how I did Moscow.
if you're coming in at 9:12, it's daylight.
Right.
What restaurant is this? Oh, there's no restaurant. Title company,
See,
insurance.
that's how. Okay, right there where that is, and they keep. I know they keep talking about the Paradise Lane and stuff like that,
Yeah.
but three girls talked about him being at the Student Union Center. And did you know that the Student Union Center is on Paradise Way?
No, I did know that. Rondi, Rondi, this is the 95, which runs north and south. We're going the direction where possibly he would have possibly been going this direction toward the King's Roadhouse, and this would have been the direction he would have been leaving Moscow that morning. So I feel lost myself. I mean, Michelle says we're like in a Bugs Bunny rabbit hole. See, I recognize that building.
Oh, heck.
There's the corner club. There's that awkward looking building. And there's the corner club. And they would have been going this direction, headed toward the grub truck, right? I think it's a block over because that's where the camera is, where she asks, "What did you tell Adam?" Somewhere around here. I'm kind of lost. But anyways, We're in downtown Moscow right now, pretty much. If you've never seen it in the daytime or without snow, this is what it looks like. I think this is the direction in which they were possibly walking. Not really. Making stuff up right now. This is not the direction. It's somewhere around there, though, because I remember that church looking building. Let me look at the chat, see if you are telling me. Nina left, so I'm up here by myself. Maybe she had to take the dog out. So, First Street. There's one thing I can do is maneuver around the town because I get lost a lot in real life, believe it or not. But what I was trying to say earlier with the 912 to 921, I'm not trying to harp on that, not trying to make it a thing. It just blew my mind because of the fact that I've never heard anybody talk about that. It's like, why wasn't that ever discussed any further? I think this is the building right here where that camera was. Because I think I remember these trees as being. Hey, Jeff.
Hey man, how you doing?
I was about to call you Nina.
You can call me whatever you want.
I was about to say, hey, Nina, what's up? Welcome back.
Good to
Well,
see you, man.
welcome. I'm glad you made it on panel. I'm just glad you took the
Yeah,
initiative.
I had a
Help
moment and I
me out
thought,
a little bit. Is this the building that the camera was where what did you tell Maddie? Or what did you tell Adam?
I can tell you exactly. I'm just looking right at it. It's 105 Main Street. It's a white
Okay,
building. I don't know
okay,
if it
this is
helps. I could,
Jackson. See, because this is still on 95. One's going north that way, one's going south this way. So
I'm going to copy the link. If I put it in the back chat, can you bring it up from there?
let me see if I
Let me
can.
put it up. And
Because
it
I
should
know
should take you
I
right
know
to it.
that has been shown very early on, but not a lot of people know where that building is. They've seen it at night, but they've
Right.
never really seen it during the day. Let me go ahead and pull this up. And this is the building. Well, shit. See, that's why I suck at. Um, Let me
I can
refresh.
also show you. I got like a graphic I did. It's a picture with the. Oh wait, hold on. I think somebody's locked outside. Hold on. They're knocking on my sliding glass kitchen door.
Uh-oh. Better grab you a knife.
I know, right?
We know you're in there. Come out with your hands up. So this is the building that had the camera. Um, where it's right here. There's that camera where they caught Kaylee, Maddie, and Showalter in between these trees right here. And right here is where that white truck was driving by and parked in one of these spaces. So you can see that that camera is angled almost perfectly that would have caught everything in sequence. Once again, here's the camera right here. And that's interesting that that camera caught so much.
Yeah, right there on the
Wait,
corner. Yeah, wasn't it at the time they whoever owned that camera just kind of offered that footage up to the family, I think, if I remember right.
Yeah, because they were like, yeah, we've seen this already before. I
And I'm
mean,
sure
if you do,
everybody on that street is like, "Did you hear about the murders? Oh my gosh, let me check my cameras." So, everybody was trying to help.
I mean, because if you go back to that video, you can kind of line stuff up like, here's that sign, and here's that tree, and here's
Yeah,
the other sign.
I sent you a picture. Or no, I didn't. It's back if you whatever I did, presented it. It's right there in the backstage. It's got some little notes on it. And I think yeah, I even put a little inset picture from the what did you say to Adam camera.
Yeah. Well, let's get back to what I was talking about. What do you think about the 912 to 921? Is that intriguing to you as well, or is that like, no big deal?
I missed
So,
it when you were talking about that. What exactly is that referring to? The next
well,
morning?
his phone pinged back in the area at 912, and it was around the King Road residence till 921. And like I told the chat, the phone was never pinging in Moscow again after that. Let me add you. Let me add another one, Nina. Running out of slots here. I've never had this full. This is interesting.
It's a party.
So, do you believe that Koberger was surveying the residents again at 912 to 921? Or, yes, 95 is going north past the bank. That's where I started this whole thing. So
Well,
it
sure sounds
is,
like you didn't go to sleep at all that night. And then are you
yeah.
really doing all that driving, going out stargazing, coming back to this area around 9:12, going taking a selfie at what 10:30? That's a
Okay,
night.
there's
That's
the
a
corner
somebody
club.
doesn't need sleep.
There's the corner club. There's that church looking building. This is the Moose Lodge, right? What's that say?
Yeah, I think it's like if it
Eagles. Eagles
Eagles.
Lodge. There's a Moose Lodge. Is this where the axe throwing was going on?
Oh, I don't know. I'm not sure.
There was axe throwing going on. So,
Part of me wonder. Remember that white truck that parks right after the what did you say to Adam? It
yeah.
does seem like it's kind of almost right across the street from the Moose Lodge and Eagles. Part of me was wondering if there was any
Y'all know
sign,
what
but I don't think it was open.
So they were on the other side of the street. I didn't realize that. I thought this building was on this left-hand side because if you go down this way, Corner Club's over here. They crossed the street and obviously walked
Right.
along this building. Wait, hold on. That's not the building you sent me. I'm getting all turned around.
where
My
the
my
back is.
No,
my
keep going to
audience.
the left. There it is. That's
Okay,
the
there
building
it
right
is,
there.
right there. My audience is getting all pissed off. Damn it, 12. Get your facts straight. You're spreading
Oh
misinformation.
my
How
God,
dare you?
I've been drinking that much.
How dare you, 12? You're spreading misinformation.
Just tell everybody it's not misinformation. It's just this information.
And this is where the grub truck was, right here.
Yeah.
And I did many of shot trying to figure out exactly where it was. There's a bench on the other side right here, and it was in between this little area and that bench
Do you
because
guys
they
ever watch the
crossed.
live streams of from the Grub Truck now currently? Because I was watching one just a couple days ago. I was hoping that guy Joe might be on there so I could ask some questions on the Twitch stream.
Joe Vito?
No, Joe the cashier Joe.
Oh,
But it was some girl that was running the cash register that night. But it's kind of cool when the live stream starts. They're like, you know, they're not there yet. They pull out of a parking lot, they drive down the road, and they pull up to that spot.
hey, this is an interesting thought. What do y'all think about this? Maybe he just never went back to Moscow after that day and moved on to his next quest.
Could be.
Who has that going on?
What is that sound? Somebody
Sounds
doing
like
dishes.
That is a
wind,
my house. No.
is it a wind tunnel?
It sounds
Okay.
like a battle, space battle from Star Wars or something.
Luke, I am your father.
It is so loud I can't hear y'all, so I'm just gonna hop down.
Okay, Nina, thank you.
All right.
Hey,
Don't give
Jeff.
a crap about the Grove truck.
I know. I know.
What do you most give a crap about, Rondi?
Hey, didn't we get into a discussion one time about that? He doesn't really say, Luke, I am your father.
No, I think he
Kind of.
does, though, doesn't he?
I thought he did, but I thought we were discussing that.
I know Sally Field doesn't actually say, you like me, you really like me. The actual quote isn't that, but that quote sounds better. It is what's in everybody's
Yeah,
memory.
yeah, it really does. Um, I read this book has really given me some interesting information to think on. The other piece, I don't know if you've been listening or not, but the other piece that I thought was interesting was the fact that in the book it stated that Xana's dad had worked on the front door lock and replaced that, not Xana's lock.
Not the bedroom.
Yeah,
Do we know if the bedrooms had locks?
I don't know. I don't
I
know if
think
they did or not.
maybe the news of him working on the outdoor door lock just spread to where people thought they were talking about the bedroom door locks. And then we all, I mean, I think most of us, I did, thought that Xana's door was closed and locked and they couldn't get in, but it doesn't appear, appear that.
Yeah, that doesn't appear to be the case.
I can't wait to hear Dylan explain. Hopefully on the stand. Hopefully we'll be able to hear it. I think what they say, we're going to hear it, but we won't be able to see her. The surviving roommates, we'll get the audio, but we won't see them. They're not going to put them on camera to the public. I think. I
Well,
thought I
that's
heard that.
fine. That's fine with me. I mean, I just want to
Yeah.
be able to hear her testimony, and hopefully they don't have the fans on that day in the courtroom worrying around. "Woo."
Right. But I really think she can explain what they were thinking that night, and we'll all like go, "Oh, okay, okay, I see. Now that makes a little more sense." I'm hoping that's the way it goes, and then we'll be like, "Oh my gosh, how many hours did we put into speculation about if we could face them and be like, sorry guys, we ran you through the
Has it
mud on all
never
this."
has it never bothered you how little we know about Bethany and her whole? I'm not trying to put her as a
Hmm.
suspect here. Let me go ahead and put that disclaimer out there. But has it ever intrigued you a little bit how little we know about her influence in this whole thing, even though she was on the first floor? Do you believe that she actually didn't hear anything at all worth mentioning in the PCA or any of the document that we've read?
Well, I mean, I always assumed it's because she's on the first floor and she's not directly under any of the rooms where the murders happen. Dylan's across the hall from one of the bedrooms and directly under, the floor where the other murder happened. But yeah, Bethany is under Dylan's room, right? So she's not hearing. She's not, or she's under the living room, maybe. I guess
Hold
maybe
on,
the
Jeff.
under.
I gotta plug my laptop in. You take over.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, I think Dylan. I think Bethany is far away from hearing anything that's happening. But I personally still lean towards this murder being a relatively quiet murder, and the only way that I can figure that something like that happens is that each victim was unalived one at a time. And if he did use Ted Bundy knock him in the head unconscious first method, that would make it even quieter. You just come up to him and bop them in the head with a hammer, and I don't know. It'll be interesting when if they reveal like from the autopsy reports if they all have serious head trauma. What looks like they were hit with something like a hammer, which might explain why the wounds don't match, or that what they're referring to with that.
Well, I had a different take on the wound not matching, and Nina and I discussed this one night. I believe that the wound don't match is because of the part where Kaylee's face was beaten,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why he stated their wound did not match. Well, one is beaten up
Yeah,
more severely than the other. The other one has no facial trauma, no kind of trauma whatsoever. Well, his daughter has all that facial trauma, so why don't those wounds match up? You know what I mean?
that makes total sense. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
mean, I can understand Steve not wanting to say at the time, because if he says it looks like her nose was broken back then, early on, her nose was broken, and then you get some nut job that says, yeah, I did the crime, I came and I broke her nose, and then it's like, that it's there must be a name for it where the police don't reveal information just to prevent nut jobs from calling in and saying, I did it, and you probably saw my red car or my green car speeding away. They know it's like, okay, this guy is making stuff up because he doesn't have the
Well,
facts that we know.
let me ask both of you a question and the chat if y'all want to interject. What Where do we get to that point in investigations where we feel that we have to know every step of the way? I mean, when did we become that kind of society where I can understand if it's your relative, your crime scene, that you'd want to know as much possible? Steve has every right, and the other families as well have every right to ask. But as far as anybody else, including myself, what does it make it any of my business what went on during that investigation? Because isn't it compromising to the potential perp, like you said earlier, if they release that Kaylee had facial trauma? We heard that Kaylee was found slumped over on Maddie. So if the killer comes out and says, that's not right, she was leaning up against the wall, slumped over, then you'd be like, oh, he knows something that contradicts what we released. But what
Right,
makes us think that we deserve every little thing that's out there?
right. Yeah, I mean, it seems like they're doing this job for the purpose of presenting it before a jury. I mean, what we all think, I'm sure they could care less. Although, whoever leaked the information to Dateline, I get my speculation is that this is someone that thought they can't take it anymore, hearing all this nonsense on YouTube, and they have some of the real fact,
Well,
just like any of us.
who would have the most to gain from that?
Yeah, that's why I don't, and it's only speculation. So, but someone on the defense, it was someone on the defense side that leaked the Delphi crime photos, the
Oh,
crime
they
scene
did.
photos. So,
They did.
so it's not like out of the realm of possibility to think that this could have come from the defense side. Because what's it going to do in the end? It's like, didn't they want to delay and delay and delay back when they were in Moscow courtroom? Now this surely they could see that this could cause a need for delay as well. Surely they knew the judge would be upset,
Of course, of course.
So that's just my gut feeling. I don't see why anyone on the prosecution would, I think they know they have a strong case and they're just waiting for the trial date. Meanwhile, Anne has done, flood the court with documents, say all kinds of things to try and create doubt during hearings, try and make police detectives look like fools on the stand when she knows they can only say so much, and they know that they're just going to take one for the team and just look like a fool because if they were to say something, it just compromises the case. So they just would rather let Anne misunderstand what they're saying, have all the people misunderstand what they're saying. I think Maori, sometimes I think we'll eventually hear from him. It's like, look, they just asked me to put like a couple images together on one page just so they could see it at one time. It was just a
Well,
simple thing.
hold
There was
on a
no
second.
reason to.
Hold on a
Mhm.
second. Were you listening to the book at all that I was reading?
Not much, no, no.
Okay.
My
Nina, were
daughter's
you listening?
B day is today.
Yes, your daughter's B-Day is today?
Yeah,
Well,
she's got
happy
friends
B-Day,
friends
daughter.
over here. Thanks.
Well, let me ask you this part. It sounded like they had more evidence before the DNA on the knife sheath. The DNA was just kind of like the icing on the cake. It sounded like they had started building this case way before the DNA on the knife sheath. So when people are saying that the DNA was the one thing that started this whole thing, the way this book is written, it doesn't suggest that that's how it happened at all.
Hmm.
They were looking for the car at WSU. They found the vehicle. They found the traffic stop. They found his ID or his driver's license. He matched the profile 185, 6 foot, bushy eyebrows, blah, 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 based on the surviving roommate's description. Um, all that. So wouldn't that have automatically maybe not pointed to him, but it would have definitely opened their eyes to a possible suspect, don't you think?
Sure. And I keep saying that I think the woman who pulled Brian over almost exactly 30 days before the murder, for that crosswalk stoplight violation, all it would have taken was her to remember pulling over a white Elantra 30 days ago. I mean, if that was you at 12, would you think if you're a cop, you pulled over this guy, you saw the video. I mean, it's not like he's an extreme weirdo or he's like wearing a clown outfit so you would never forget it, but just the fact that you had to look up some legal code for him. Probably doesn't always happen with a traffic stop. This might be unique. He's got a white Elantra. It's only 30 days after, or 30 days before the crime happened. So and I don't know if a BOLO goes out to police officers before it goes out to the public. So if there's something in their documents that say, hey, this murder just happened, you all have heard about it, looking for a white Elantra. Anybody got anything? It sure seems to me the chances are good this woman's like, oh man, I remember pulling over a white Elantra. And it was funny because he made it sound like there were no crosswalks in Pennsylvania. I remember that. I remember having to
Right.
look up a code for him. I remember the dispatcher thinking at first for a moment that I was talking about a Sonata, but it was an Elantra. Just the fact that that little bit of conversation happened might make her remember Elantra. Because I mean, I tell you what, before this crime, I don't know if I ever uttered the word Elantra. I don't know if I knew anybody with Elantra. Elantra wasn't something I paid attention to.
Me
Now it's
neither.
all I see him every day.
Yeah. Nina, what do you think?
Huh. I think I want the
Do,
Elantra to be green.
do we still sound like we're whispering?
No, but boy, that was one hell of a damn rainstorm, let me tell you.
That's what that sound was. Oh
That's what that
gosh!
sound was.
Jesus.
Wow.
I mean,
Wow.
it was coming down. My dog came running in like, dang, mama, what'd you do? Let the sky fall or something?
Is your neighbor Noah building an ark?
Oh, Lord.
Wow, I didn't know
That was rain.
that was pretty loud. That was pretty
Yeah,
loud.
it wasn't wind. It wasn't anything. It was rain.
Yeah. So do you think there was a lot of evidence before the sheath was sent off for verification of DNA based on what you heard of the book?
Yeah. I mean, because, and I've always wondered if because you've got a perpetrator and then 4 victims, so that's 5 mixtures. And I think I had told you about the interview that CC Moore did, where she's talking about that maybe it took some time to separate all the mixtures and get them all identified and separated out, and that could have they could have gotten those results after the gag order.
Okay. But everything that you heard me read as far as all the evidence that they were gathering, the driver's license, you
Right.
know, do you think that they got that? Because I remember hearing about that very early on that they got a lot of evidence based on that traffic stop. They got his,
Yeah, they
um,
got his license, his phone number, his registration. I mean, yeah, I mean, you know everything you get at a traffic stop.
hmm
And for
so,
anybody that wants to try to debunk that they got his phone number, look up Gray Hughes. He got pulled over, and sure enough, the police asked him for his phone number in Moscow, Idaho.
so, I mean, regardless how they got it, they got the information, and I bet it was done in a way that was professional.
Yeah, it
I
was
mean,
legal.
there was something in that traffic stop that we heard in the hearings that they don't want to be presented in front of the jury for a particular reason. I'm wondering if maybe there was a interaction between the suspect and the police officer that was maybe not friendly. Maybe both of them got out of line a little bit. What do y'all think? What do you think, Nina?
Oh, I think he was just being misogynistic.
Okay. What do you think, Jeff?
Oh, it was a female. It was a female officer on that.
Oh
No.
no, I'm thinking about the female one. You're talking about the 21st one.
Yeah, the 21st
Oh
pulled
yeah,
over.
but see, you could tell that he was being arrogant because he was like, "When I get finished with this or something like that, we can go for coffee."
But we're not even talking about that stop. We're not talking about when he got arrested. We're talking about the 21st. Do you believe that there's something on that camera footage that they don't want the juries to see because they're not going to show that video footage in front of the jury? They're going to show it, but what's on that camera footage that they don't want the jury to really see? Is there an interaction between both of them? That maybe the police weren't as professional as they should have been. Maybe Koberger lost it. You know, something
I
like
don't think
that.
they want us to see all the DoorDash bags.
Okay. I'm trying to be serious. Come on.
No, seriously. If he got pulled over, that could be his excuse for being there. I'm not saying he was the driver,
The
but
DoorDash
why are you over
bag.
here and you don't know anybody over there? So, you put a DoorDash bag or something like that in the car and you say, I'm dashing, or I'm doing
Which
Spark for Walmart, or I'm doing Uber, or you see what I'm saying?
which side do
I
you
mean,
feel is protesting the use of that camera footage? The defense or the
The defense is
prosecution?
protesting it.
Yeah. He must have shown some element of himself
Well, the
that
way that Massoff explained it in the court thing, and I know she didn't say all of it, but the way she explained it was he's asking him stuff like, "What do you do if somebody doesn't do something?" And then he's asking him, like, "Why do you want my phone number?" Like resisting giving him his phone number, and she didn't want it to look like he had just come from surveilling the 1122 King Road, and he didn't want to show his ID or anything because he didn't want them to know who he was.
well, I understand that. I understand that. But I also thought, way back when, because I'm putting all this stuff together on what I remember hearing at the very beginning. In my mind, I thought that they had made that traffic stop right there on the hill, of King Road. The way they made it sounded, that they had caught him not far from the residence, which I'm sure where they pulled him over is not definitely that far, but I thought that they had caught him in an incriminating situation where, that's what escalated that traffic stop. I could be wrong. Did y'all
I
ever
know they got
remember
him
hearing
at,
that?
what was it, Farm Road, and it's right there at the strip malls and everything on the main road.
Any chance he wasn't alone in the car?
See, that's what I've wondered, and I thought, man, he ain't gonna have a friend. Who's gonna be his friend? Unless it's the little Chinese lady.
That's who I was thinking of. That's where my mind was going
So why would
directly.
he bring the Chinese lady to survey the 1122?
That's a dang alibi. Come on, we just riding around.
No,
Look
but
at this
maybe something
apartment I'm
about
thinking about moving in. You know, those queen apartments.
Oh my goodness.
maybe the interaction between him and the girl, would have said
Here, honey, we're
something
gonna go
or
parking on the hill.
insinuated something. I don't know.
I mean, it could have been anybody. It could have been
It
another
was a
guy
seatbelt
that
violation, right? Wasn't it?
Yeah.
we don't know.
But
We
but
don't.
wait a minute. But wait a minute. Wait. There's a little thing about that. That is according to either the state of Idaho or Latah County or Moscow or some kind of law, you cannot pull somebody over strictly for a seatbelt violation. There has to be a violation that they get pulled over for. And
Mm.
then if you notice the seatbelt, you can write them for that.
Well, we all are in agreement, I'm sure, that he was not the best of driver. Days later, he Googled reasons a police officer can detain you.
Right.
Okay, so are we in unison that he was not the best of driver?
100.
You
That was
know,
August 21st. You said. I think I
Yes.
found it in a PCA. I was just curious what it
Aaron,
said
I
here.
was gonna say that, but I that's what I thought he was doing, and um, that's what I
Wait,
think. I
I
thought
just saw
that,
what Aaron said.
yeah, I really thought that that's what they pulled him over for. Like the police officer pulled up, and caught him doing that. You know,
So that's why he cleaned his car so thoroughly.
I don't know. I don't know about all that, but just just crazy.
Okay, no, it does say at the time Koberger, who was the sole occupant on August 21st, was driving a white Elantra, Pennsylvania plate, set to expire on November 30th.
I haven't read all the court documents. I've kind of picked and choose what I've been reading. But I did, I have been looking at other people's um, streams that I respect, and I have, pick and choose a little bit of what I've been hearing, but um, I haven't been reading a lot of the documents. So he was speeding also. So I hear an echo.
You hear an echo?
I don't know. Kinda a little bit. Not as bad. So, yeah, there it is. Is it on your end, Jeff?
No, I got. Wait. Say something.
Say something.
Yeah, you're only coming through my headphones only, so it
Okay,
couldn't
that's
be me.
that's better. I've never heard an echo before. I don't know where that echo suddenly started coming from. It's aggravating because when I use
Say
the
say
other,
something. Say something loud.
say something loud.
Huh? Is it an
Wow.
echo of your own voice or me
Yes,
or?
yes, it's the echo of my own voice.
I mean, in theory, like Nina, do you listen to 12 gauge through the speakers on your computer or through a pair of headphones?
See, I
I'm
have
on the
speakers.
phone
Well,
with speakerphone.
she was muted though, so it
Yeah, I
couldn't
was
be
muted the
couldn't
whole
be
time.
her.
See, I have speakers plugged into the laptop, so I don't know if that's possibly the interaction that the microphone is catching.
Uh,
I don't know. Do you hear it? Do you
I didn't
guys
hear it.
hear it as
I
much in
don't
the
But
hear
chat?
any kind of echo.
if Nina's muted, then it's probably my voice coming through your speakers 12 into your microphone. I would think.
Yeah. Well, I'm not trying to throw unnecessary facts out there. I'm really not. I mean, we're we're really just talking about a lot of stuff that we've heard along the way. We can't deny that either we've said this or we've heard it. So, I mean, does it make it untrue just because we believe it? I mean, that's the argument that people have all over the YouTube streets is is it really untrue if we believe this? You know what I mean? Um, so I just don't. I don't know.
Do you think Ann Taylor is fighting very hard for Brian,
I
like in the
don't.
courtroom?
I really don't.
You don't think she's trying everything and anything to? I
I
mean,
mean,
my.
I believe that she is, but I don't believe she's going above and beyond.
But I mean, if the state had a very weak case, truly did have a weak case, would she be doing all she's doing? I mean, like, do you go into the boxing ring and you give it all you've got against a very weak opponent, or do you give it all you've got when you're fighting against somebody that is much stronger? You know they can beat you. You know they're most likely going to beat you. Yeah, it's a metaphor. Is all I'm trying to say. Is that I wonder if she knows that the state's case is very strong and she's got to just try everything, even if it means going back to the 1800s case law for to try
Well,
even that.
also, let me ask you this, Jeff. They don't have to prove as. I mean, the defense doesn't have to be doing all that they're doing. They could stay silent. They
Right.
could have stayed silent the whole time, not tried to suppress anything, not tried to bring about all these motions in limine, none of this stuff. You know, they could have stood silent the whole time. It's
Hmm.
not their job to present the the burden of proof. You know, it's the prosecution. So I believe that they've been trying, like you said, they've been trying a little more diligent to get a lot of stuff thrown out. And I mean, it's logical. She's doing her job to try to, see what she can possibly get thrown out. But it seems like with this judge, he's a lot more on cue than Judge was for whatever reason. And,
Right. Right.
I think she's just trying to um, get the death penalty taken off of his case because I mean, I'm sure that she could possibly live with, knowing that, well, he's not going to die on my watch, which is really theatrical at this point because he has all the appeals, left. But
Did you see Tom's question? I hadn't
didn't they
heard
say
that.
Brian knows who the real murderer is? I've never heard that, Tom. But she would be ineffective counsel if she didn't do all she could. You're right. And I believe that's what she's doing. Is just she's setting up an appeal, for the appellate court. Um, because the last thing you want to be known as the ineffective counsel, right?
Right.
I have to go back, check my notes, but I heard it. Wow, that's
Be
interesting.
interesting. I wonder how Koberger would know who the killer is, though. That's very interesting.
Then what has taken him so long to reveal that? What has kept him silent so long?
I know who did it, but I'm not going to tell you for 2 years.
It was Mickey Mouse and Daffy Duck.
But I can't wait. I can't wait for the trial to just start and just to get questions answered, have more understanding of things. Because right now, it just any gray area that's compelling and has possibilities. I mean, go so many different possibilities. Whether you're parachuting in with a DoorDash bag, or whether you're like the only dog in an entire neighborhood. So when you're barking, it's like I know who that dog is because there's only one of them over there. All kinds of just stuff. And sure, I'm sure we're hearing awful things happen 100 yards away on a camera that's like $70, and a little tiny hole in the camera that's the microphone with a. Let's put an apartment building in between it and the sound source we're trying to hear too, and
I
there's just
mean,
so
that
much.
camera looked like it was half-ass wired. You know what I mean? It didn't even look professionally wired. Kane, if
Well,
you're
it's kind of
watching this,
it's kind of
no
sloppy.
shade against you, but it looked like you barely put it up there in a quick. 5 minute
It's a
interval.
little sloppy because it looks like he's got a second camera there too with some wiring.
Yeah.
But yeah, those looking at my camera right here, I'm looking at it. It's got like if you power it over an Ethernet cable, you only need to run one cable to it. But if you don't have they call it PPOE or PoE, power over Ethernet. If you don't have that box, then you've got to run a separate Ethernet cable and power separately. So yeah, the wiring can get a little sloppy, but I
I
don't know. You
mean,
probably tell looking
you
at.
think due to the planning of this crime, if Brian is the culprit, don't you think he understood the layout of everything? He would like the Queen Road apartment, the Linda Lane apartments, all the ins and outs, the roads, the sounds and all this stuff. If he was really planning this, don't you think he would have been trying to figure out, okay, well, is this going to capture all of me, or is this going to just capture part of the car? Is this going to capture this? I mean, I don't even know if he went into that extent.
Well, I think if he probably is thinking as long as I don't do something stupid like leave my knife sheath or something that points to me in the house, then I can. There's nothing illegal about driving through that neighborhood in your car. I really think without the DNA on the knife sheath component, well, and the witness, I gotta wonder if he didn't even see Dylan, so he didn't know that a witness saw his eyebrows. Got to look at what he was wearing. But if he could have gone into that house without leaving a knife sheath and without being seen by anyone, there's nothing illegal about driving your car around the neighborhood, even if you come through there 5 times within a half hour in the middle of the night. I mean, if I would be a little more careful than that. I'd be like, certainly there's going to be some neighbor that's up late in a college town. Be like, here comes that white car again. He just came through here. Oh, jeez.
Y'all see that? They
Is he
said his
calling you? Did
driver.
he? Is
It
that
says
the?
that his driver's license photo is insane.
That is not his driver's license photo. Now you are spreading misinformation.
That freaking website is insane. Happy Memorial Day to you guys. Hope y'all, had a reasonable, enjoyable day. It's sad but true. Some of us have to go back to work tomorrow.
Hey,
Well, you can look at it this way
have
too.
you ever looked at his Carfax?
Yeah, a
Yeah,
little
a
bit.
long time
I had
ago.
it.
That's some pretty interesting stuff.
What'd you see on there?
Because it April the 20th of 2022, it says title issued or updated at Pennsylvania Motor Vehicles. That was in April of 2022. So then on 11/18, that's just eerie as hell. On 11/18, it says Washington State Motor Vehicle title issued or updated. He even moved his title. Well, I guess he would have to get a Washington State tag.
Yeah.
But then it says that he did a manufacturer service for underbody corrosion preventative.
Hmm.
The
What the
dude,
hell?
the dude could not drive. I mean, you don't know if he ran over.
He had his tires
He could have
checked
ran
in
over a cat,
August.
a dog, anything on the way speeding out of that neighborhood as fast as he was going. Do you believe that there was someone almost struck, like Dateline said?
No.
That
It
was
seems
too
like they
quick,
would have.
Nina.
It seems like
What?
they would have. We'd have heard something, or there would have been a. Where was this person supposedly located? Where he almost got hit? I mean, you don't see it on camera.
I don't know.
Somebody crossing Taylor, maybe. I don't know. Hey, what
Man,
does
he
the
put
VIN number
10,000
end
miles
with?
on his car.
What's the
We've
VIN
heard
number
this.
end with, Nina, that you're looking at?
Y'all,
Uh,
Y'all email each other that information.
I texted it to you.
Does it
Uh,
end with a 0? And just making sure you got the, if either you have
Oh
the
hell!
correct VIN or I do.
Don't tell me there's a fake one.
Aaron said
Well,
no because we would have known. No personal on the street.
Well, I found the title number. Where's the VIN number? All right, there's the
You put a
ticket.
ton of miles on that car in a few months. Yeah, we heard about that very early on.
Yeah, he went from shoot, sorry.
Well, how can you survey somebody's house 23 times and not put a lot of miles on your vehicle?
At let's see, 12622 in Broadheadsville, Pennsylvania. He had 96,531 miles. When he got to Pullman, Washington, before he got there, but in August, he had 111,800 miles.
Well, I mean, that was from the drive from Pennsylvania to Pullman. 2,800 miles.
Okay,
That
2,800 miles from 96,000 would be at like 98,000.
2,800 miles.
I mean, he was at 96,531. Then that was January of 22. April of 22, he's already up at 101,000 and
I don't know.
5,000 miles.
The dude likes to drive. He's not good at it. Obviously, I mean, you know, what else can we say? He's not a good driver. But neither was Ted Bundy. Neither was Ted. So I don't know what to say.
12, do you ever feel like there's two, I always, in my mind, I guess I picture is there's two types of conversations to have on this subject. There's having the conversation where you want to figure out if he did it, how'd he do it, and then there's a separate conversation of like, okay, legally in the courtroom, how will this play out? Because I think sometimes,
Oh yeah,
I mean,
totally different narratives.
I like to entertain both at the same time, but sometimes I feel like the other side that's opposite of us, for the most part, is I just want to. If it can't be, if it's not going to work in the courtroom, didn't happen. Didn't. You can't prove that. You can't prove that. And I'm interested in the courtroom. They'll figure out and will dispel justice for this murder, this awful crime, but. I mean,
But
it
how?
just seems like there's a human nature to want to know how this happened, even if we walked away out of the courtroom, victorious, but still is the guy who did it, and we,
But let
just
me ask you the bigger question, Jeff. Is how come this case? How come this case? How come not the Karen Reed case? Um, the Gilgo Beach case? How even Delphi didn't really. I mean, I didn't dive into that deep. I guess it did have a huge following. Summer Wells, Gabby Petito. I guess all those cases did. But how come this case now versus all the stuff that's going around? How come people are still latched on 2.5 years later, fighting as hard as they do for this case? What is it about this case? And don't tell me constitutional rights and all that other stuff, because you know what? There's been some other cases. If you really deep dive into law, there's been some other more controversial cases than this, and they still executed those people. So, this isn't one of those once in a lifetime cases that's going to shape and change case law. You know what I mean? It could, but I don't believe it. How come this case?
I mean, I think if it were puzzles that are on a table, like you got the Koberger puzzle, Karen Reed puzzle, and all these other cases, I think there's something compelling about the Koberger puzzle because you can almost see what it will be. You can almost figure out the puzzle. You feel like you're this close. There's so much information, but not quite to solve it. But there's just enough to make it interesting. Like, okay, you can kind of. So, I mean, how many times have you felt like you talked to somebody who's a guilter and they say, "Oh, it's obvious. You can just see it. You can see all the pieces fit. And then the Proberger says the exact same thing. It's so it's. I mean, it's very much
Well,
like a.
I
What
don't
are the?
talk to a lot of people that don't believe he could have done it. I don't. The ones that do talk to me about possibly on the other side of the coin, they don't bring a good enough conversation to really listen to in my eyes. Like I said earlier, if somebody was to able to give all the evidence that I was reading about earlier and then bring me an argument on how that evidence could not have been him, other than it was planted, corruption, financial gain, all that other stuff that's been said. If you can bring me an argument on that, then I'll listen to it. But they don't. They don't bring a compelling argument. They bring stuff that they've been talking about for years, you know? How are you going to feel if he's innocent, Jeff?
Well, I mean, what can I do about it? you know, if I would like to feel that if he is found innocent, that I agree with that, and I can see, okay, okay, we definitely had some things wrong. We learned about it in the courtroom. Like I've always said, I've thought Steve G will stand up in the courtroom, and if he feels like this is not the right guy at the end of the court, and say, no. If they say guilty, and Steve G, I could see him standing up, saying, "Hold on, hold on. Were you guys not listening to the trial? That this clearly is not the guy. This is wrong."
I think we're all in agreement that once the trial is over and we hear everything, as long as justice prevails, on to the next. I believe that a lot of people will not be able to do any other cases after this one. They've invested so much time and so much energy that this is their grand finale for some of them, you know?
But
There's a
I'll
lot of.
admit it. The Kieran Reed trial does not hold my interest in the way this one does. Not at all. I still sit there and I think, well, what I'm confused as to what most people believe and why they believe it. What do the people believe stronger, that she did it or that she didn't do it? And to
I
be
don't
honest,
know
I don't even
either.
know. There's pieces of the tail light. Did it happen? Did it break when she hit him? I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, that one has some speculation and stuff too. I mean, I've heard an animal attacked him. That's where he got all the scratches and all that. And I'm not saying this as being factual because I'm just saying, based on stuff that I've heard, it just like you just said, she supposedly hit him. The tail light wasn't broken based on a camera shot that captured the car, but then when the car was then investigated again, there was a broken tail light. So it just all I just don't know. I just don't know.
Right, and they don't they claim that she was pulling out and that there's video of her backing into a vehicle, although that vehicle, as far as I can tell, looking at it, that vehicle that she supposedly hit doesn't seem to move. So that tells me that it doesn't seem like it was hit hard enough to break a tail light. I don't know. You can tell I don't know enough about that case to even be
Either
about.
me either. I mean, I just did that one interview with her, and that was it. I mean, I thought, well, maybe she's going to clear up some of the stuff that could point one way or the other, and it doesn't. I mean,
But I did find I found. Mhm.
that case has an animal in it too, just like the Idaho has the cougar. It has the cat and has the dog barking and all that other stuff. I mean,
Does have bugs flying past the camera so you know where the crime was happening? Because the bugs would fly away from the crime.
I don't believe that we'll ever. I agree with you. I could not vote guilty if I had a reasonable doubt that she did it. Um, I do not believe that, all the stuff that we focused our minds on. You and I had talked about Maddie's coat for long lengths of time. We talked about Linda Lane for a long time. We talked about, inside the house and all that stuff. The only video that I don't feel bad about putting out there are the inside the house videos because that's where the crime took place. And talking as long and in length detail that we did. All the other stuff, I mean, the investigative stuff, I don't feel bad about that. But, there's just some videos that I think, why did we even do those videos? It had no
Yeah.
sense of relevance, none whatsoever now that we know what we know. It makes me feel silly to even have those up because it sounds so out there. And I'm convinced the other way. I'm convinced that they got the right person, at least based on the evidence. And even though I listen to those videos, I'm like, man, this is some. If I was listening to your stuff, I would think this guy's a cuckoo. This guy's out there. You get what I'm
Right.
saying? You get what I'm
Yeah.
saying, Joe?
Shoot, I remember when in the beginning of this, before they arrested anyone, and I was thinking we were all trying to figure out how it could have been done, and I was like, well, did he? Is Maddie's bed right up next to the window? Did he slide the window open and just from the outside stab, from into the, or I even had a theory where it's like, well, did he have like night vision goggles so he could see them, and but they couldn't see him, so that's how he had the jump on them. That's how they couldn't fight back, and yeah, the brain trying to figure out a puzzle goes in all different kinds of directions. But I think, a
Exactly.
good brain goes in directions that say, okay, now I've left the realm of possibility or probability and, you know, the roof. It was a parachute. It had to be a parachute to the roof. Of course. That's why there's few footprints outside.
I mean, while I was doing the videos, I didn't think it was bullshit. I mean, my stuff, I didn't think my stuff was bullshit, but I mean, looking back on it, I'm kind of like embarrassed a little bit as what, I mean, just reviewing some of it, I'm like, man. And obviously, I was still kind of learning about the judicial process and everything. And I had no clue that it worked the way it does. And now, I'm about the end of my degree and I have a pretty good understanding. But, maybe I shouldn't have been making as many videos as I was because I really sounded a little off in some of them.
What?
Night
Yeah.
vision goggles, I jumped on that as
Yeah.
well. I jumped on that as well.
Yeah, that
Uh,
that definitely had to have come from Silence of the Lambs as an influence. Just
yeah,
like my theory of Ethan being in the bathroom, although now it sounds more and more like Ethan was passed out in the
yeah,
bed. But my theory when I thought he was in the bathroom while Xana was being attacked and coming out of the bathroom, that was totally from Pulp Fiction,
yeah.
with John Travolta. So all my
I
theories are
mean,
probably movie related somehow.
I mean, at least we're man enough to admit it. You know what I mean? It's like, well, we were out there a little bit, and but on some of the stuff we really weren't as out there as most other people. And does that make it any better? It probably doesn't, but for me, it makes me feel better that I didn't jump all the way and start drinking the Kool-Aid. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. But it is amazing that we can still go on and on for hours on live streams and discuss. Like, it's like a never ending tennis match. It's like, isn't it 40 love yet? No. No, we're still playing it. So are we middle of the game? No, not even close.
No, this is that Atari game, that Atari first game, video game that came out, that Ping or whatever, Pong,
Pong. Pong,
that
yeah.
doop, doop, doop.
Yeah, I remember my dad brought that home. We play, and you had handball too, right? If you're just playing alone, you just hit it
Yeah,
against the wall.
yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, you play those for hours and it never ends because, you master the memory of what you learn. And,
yeah,
I think that's what a lot of this is people master what they learn. And it's difficult to go against what you learn. I mean, it becomes pattern.
right.
But I'm glad that we're able to, stand up here and or sit up here and say, you know, we're we're humble enough to make mistakes and still keep going. I don't think I really hurt anybody by what I've said.
Right. Typically, were you good at Pong? I loved that game. That That was so
Hello,
much
did
fun.
someone say Pong? 1970 baby. Yeah, I did. I wasn't
Asteroids was
good
my
at
favorite
Pong
video game,
either.
though.
I mean, it was frustrating. I didn't have the attention span then. It was just like, this is boring. Dong, dong, dong. Not very
Well, what
good
was
at.
cool is if you could rake across the ball as it's coming, like fast, you'd whip you'd run the risk of letting the ball go by, but if you could go past it, put a
Yeah,
little put a little English
yeah.
on it.
You know what game I could play was on the Atari 5200, I think it was called.
Yeah,
I love Centipede, man. I could sit there and play
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Where you're shooting at those centipede things coming down on the screen.
yeah,
I could sit there and play that for hours.
yeah. But asteroids. My grandmother worked in a restaurant, and in the restaurant they had an asteroids arcade game, and she'd give me a roll of quarters,
Yeah.
and I would play with like these adults here. I'm just a kid, and we're taking turns, and I'm showing them, what's what. But I'm telling you, is anybody else experience where you get to that last quarter, the very last quarter, it's your last quarter. That is like your best game, because I guess because after this there is no more playing.
Yeah, the pressure's on.
Yeah, and
Frogger, she's saying Frogger. I remember
hmm
Frogger because you'd have your memorized little up two, over one, up one, over two. You know what I mean? Like I
yeah,
said, it's
yeah,
all about memory. You memorize this stuff and you're like, okay, I'm gonna beat this time. You have your little codes and all
yeah. I
that
had
stuff.
Pac-Man patterns, up until like what is it, the little thing you get at the little things you get at the bottom. I think it was like up to bird seed or to
Yeah,
keys,
yeah,
and
yeah. Miss
but I never learned it all
Pac-Man.
the way. I never learned how to get it to the point where you play so far that it shuts the game down. It's like where the developers are like, nobody will get this far. Let's just cut it off here.
Yeah,
Nobody could do that.
right, right. Miss Pac-Man.
How about Hyper Miss Pac-Man? When Miss Pac-Man was moved twice, three times as fast as normal. That's the
Right.
one I liked.
It was interesting back then. We were cutting edge, and just like everything else, kind of like we'll look back on this and we'll be like, "Wow, we were really on to a lot of good stuff there." Hopefully, we were able to pick up on some other cases together, Jeff, and we're able to, kind of deep dive into them. It's difficult while this case
Yeah.
is still going on because you want to move on, but it's almost like breaking up with somebody who's toxic. They call you up and you say, "Well, I'm only going to come over and talk to you for a little bit." And there you are
hmm
3 hours later. And she's like,
Right.
"Oh, come on, just one more drink." You know what I mean? And it, well, I really shouldn't stay. I
Closing
really, I
time.
really should be going by now. Oh, come on. We've had such a good night. We haven't fought. Yeah, but we're
Yeah.
pushing our luck. We're pushing our luck at this point. You know,
I'm so
you,
glad we had this time together.
you know what I mean? So
Yeah,
it's kind
maybe
of
we
like
should
that.
do 12 gauge and Jeff H play guitar live streams. We maybe would drop the legal stuff completely and just become, we'll just be musicians playing together on a live stream.
Or we should be comedians, something like
Oh
that.
yeah, we are hilarious after all.
I believe so. Hey,
Funny looking.
copyrighted and I got copyrighted and blocked the other night. I was watching a George Strait cover band and he played Amarillo by Morning and I uploaded it on a short. I didn't even upload the whole song. I guess
Yeah.
he did such a good job. They copyrighted me.
Oh man.
And it wasn't even George. It was
Huh.
that cover band, and I was like, wow.
Well, maybe the cover bands even have their stuff, copywritten for protection or something. But yeah,
I
it
don't
sounds like. Well,
know.
remember you got copyright for when I played Dust in the Wind.
Yeah.
That wasn't even Dust in the Wind. That was.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy.
I took it as a compliment, though.
Right. It's
Sorry,
like,
sorry, you got copywritten, but I took it as a compliment.
yeah, now I got, been copyrighted by you, copyrighted by Nina. I mean, it's
You want me to play it again, just see if it happens
no, if
again?
your friend can't get you copyrighted, who can, right?
That's right. That's right.
Thank you for that compliment, Mountain Mama. I try to keep it no drama over here. I mean, usually the only drama I create is the drama I create. You know, I am usually the one creating the drama, and
You know, the other day, I don't think you got that comment. You were talking about how you get dizzy up in mountains. The mountains make you dizzy, and I made a
yeah,
comment about does Mountain Mama make you dizzy? Do you remember that?
yeah, I did. I did get that comment. Yeah,
Only I thought it was funny. Is that what it
yeah.
was? Okay.
It was
Well,
one of
I'm
those.
used to that. I'm used to that.
It was one of those moments, Jeff. You know, where you're laughing, I'm kind of giggling, and the rest of the crowd is like, "Okay, so you had pizza for dinner?" You know, it's like, okay. You know, that's how I view my first guitar on stage. Being, I'm sitting there just jamming my heart out. I finished the guitar solo, and I hear,
Yeah.
"I'll take a double."
Yeah. Where's the restroom? Where's the restroom? Can you show me where the restroom is?
Yeah, yeah. Do you have quarters for $1?
I need change for the payphone. I'm not staying for anything. I'm just going right back out.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I view it. You know, it's like, just play your best. This is the best solo you've ever had.
Well,
And
we've
then
had
at
like
the end,
times where we're playing and like we know we're cut off and but we want to play one more. We always want to play one more. So we look at
yeah,
the owner of the restaurant and say, can we get one more?" And when the way he says is like, "Fine, one more." It's like that's not very encouraging. Everybody in the place heard the way you said that. It's like, yeah,
right.
you guys suck. Go ahead and play
Yeah.
one more. Damn it, I'll stay a little late.
At that point, you're just like, start breaking the instruments. Ah!
Put
You know what
put
I mean?
lighter fluid on the guitar, set it ablaze,
Right,
and
right,
now we
exactly.
got a show.
Yeah, you guys suck. Get off the stage.
We're trying very hard to the band I'm playing with. Some band members have had a lot of stuff, personal stuff going on in their lives, so it's hard to get things going. But we're trying to get so where we're playing in front of people, and we got a couple songs we're working very hard on. A Black Magic Woman by Santana, Magic Man by Heart. Those are the two like difficult ones that have a lot of changes and a lot of stuff to remember. But
You know, I could see where you'd get annoyed at playing the same songs, especially they become popular. You're like, oh, not this song again. Smoke on the Water one more time.
right,
Stairway to Heaven. Any of those. It's like, what do y'all want to hear tonight? Y'all want to hear some of the new stuff? Play Smoke on the Water. Oh God, here we go.
yeah, I saw an article somebody wrote or a comment, and they were like, why do you got to be like that? Can you really imagine yourself? Damn it, do I got to play this song again that made me $1 million? Oh, jeez, I don't want to play the song that made me $1 million.
I read somewhere where they didn't like to play Panama.
Really?
Van Halen hated playing Panama and Jump.
Huh.
I read Motley Crue when I was reading that book. They didn't like to play some damn song that became popular. You're like, I don't want to play that song. Oh,
Yeah.
I was reading Janie Lane when he was doing his autobiography. He didn't want to play Cherry Pie anymore because that's the only song anybody wanted to
Mm,
hear with Cherry Pie.
right, right.
He's like, I hated that song.
Hey, good night. Typically,
Yeah, we're about to cut it off. I'm
say
I'm
hi to
getting kind of
Carlos if
tired.
that's not
Yeah,
Carlos.
say hi to Carlos. Well, you guys in the chat, thank you for hanging on for 3 hours and 15 minutes. Nina, thank you for being up here off and on. Hope the storm passes you. Texas, if you hear this on replay, I hope that the storm wasn't too bad over there, buddy. And anybody else affected by these storms, I hope that they don't cause any extreme damage to your property or to yourselves. Be safe out there. Jeff, as always,
Yes, it's
we'll
fun,
have to
man.
do we'll have to
Like
do this
like
a
old
little
times.
earlier, and appreciate you hopping up here.
Thanks, man. Thanks, man. I'm gonna hop off unless you want to talk any after.
No, I'm good. I'm gonna
You
call it
good?
a night. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm getting
Have
a
a
little
good
tired
one,
too.
man.
All
Have a
right,
good one.
thanks, man.
All
All
right.
right,
Bye
bye.
bye. Well, the rest of you, you know what I do. You know what I say. Y'all go check out that Memorial Day video that I made. It's on my page. Tell me what you think about it. I really started making videos and stuff on some songs and stuff. Y'all let me know what you think. Y'all have an awesome night. And Maestro, cue that music. Hell, I might just play this one. No, I'll go ahead and play it.